Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you very much for tuning into the program. It's Friday, July the 5th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. David Williams, he's producing the Come On With an edition of the program. So, if you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue and on the air, 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, it's toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 86-26. So for soccer fans, big game tonight, of course, at the Copa America. We're into the knockout stage. Canada versus Venezuela. Can't remember what time it is. I think Brian Redor maybe said 10 p.m. Ireland time. I'll check it out. But we're in with a shot. I mean, we're the 48th ranked team in the world. Venezuela at 54. So should be a fairly evenly matched set up tonight. But what we need to do is score a bloody goal. All right, over at Wimbledon, a couple of Canadians on to the third round. Denis Shapovalov, another huge win yesterday. He was up 2 sets. His opponent battled back, but he won 6-4 in the fifth. So he's at it today versus another left-hander, big hitter, number 14, the 14th seed, Ben Shelton, and Bianca Andreescu on to the third round. Good for her. She's up against it, though. Number 7, Paulini. Paulini just made it to the finals of the French Open, of course, coming up short to Iga Swiatek. And yesterday we mentioned it was on this date in 1981, or yesterday in 1981, where John McEnroe beat Bjorn Borg at Wimbledon to bring his 5 straight Wimbledon titles to an end. It was on this date in 1980 that Borg got the better of McEnroe to win his 5th straight. And of course, that included a tiebreak in the 4th set that was 22 minutes and 34 points. So amazing stuff. And how about this one on the ladies' side? 1997 at the finals, the 16-year-old Swiss Martina Hingis beat Jana Novotná, the youngest Wimbledon winner in 110 years, 16 years of age, winning a Grand Slam. Amazing stuff. So apparently there's some sort of sports and recreation announcement coming up at around 11 o'clock this morning at Confederation Building. The Premier will be there, Minister Crocker will be there, and Brad Goodger will be there. Now, it feels like that might be a tip-off as to what might be announced here. We know that the province and the city lost a curling sheet, I guess 4 curling sheets when Ballyhaley was sold. So maybe, just maybe, some sort of curling-related announcement. But anyway, sports and recreation announcement coming up. Very quickly, mark your calendars. So the Alex LaHook Golf Classic is going to take place on August the 6th. But the night before, a fan fest, opportunity for kids and families to get up close and personal, get some autographs and pics taken with Alex LaHook. And he's got a good compliment of some of his buddies from the Montreal Canadiens also coming to town. So mark your calendar. August the 5th is going to be late afternoon, early evening, if you'd like to attend the fan fest. Okay, let's keep going. These are new guidelines being welcomed by the Eating Disorder Foundation, and it's guidelines coming from the Canadian Pediatric Society. So it's about screening adolescents for eating disorders when you have a routine checkup. This just makes sense because you might not notice the signs at home. You know, sometimes it's a dead giveaway. You say, oh my God, my child has a problem. But inside of this new guideline, there's going to be deep, probing questions from the doctor. The potential to lead to earlier diagnosis, treatment, and recovery. So this is probably a very wise idea, you know, because some of the signs can be easily hidden. And people who are suffering from an eating disorder, certainly in the onset, are very good at hiding them because there's a certain level of embarrassment associated with it, I would suggest. So, and embarrassment is never wise when we're talking about a mental illness, but these are probably very proactive and meaningful new guidelines from the Canadian Pediatric Association. We can take it on if you're so inclined. Stick with youth for a second. Now, just a caveat or a clarification before we get into it. There is no handbook or textbook about how to be a parent. It's the most rewarding yet the most difficult job in the world many, many times. So this is a new report coming from a journal called The Frontiers in Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. They're talking about when you're trying to calm a fussy child. And what's one of the go-tos is to give them your smartphone. because they're a great distraction. And with all the lights and bells and whistles and little games that they can play, it's one of the go-to mechanisms. Back when my boys were small, maybe, just maybe, we would also turn to a screen, but would maybe put Toy Story in or something like that. So this report is really quite clear about the short-term relief that parents can achieve, but the long-term problems. We all know the case, right? So you'll have a child who is a fussy eater, and they like chicken nuggets. And if you try to get them a piece of broccoli or a carrot or something, then comes the consequential tantrum or the refusal to eat. Same thing when we, succumb to the child because, look, we're tired, it's busy, and some children can be really quite a handful. Whether you have a colicky baby or a really hyperactive toddler. So I get it. We all did the same thing. We looked for ways just to get a moment of peace and quiet. But what they're saying here is this leads to angry outbursts and continued tantrums longer and later into life. We already know what the issues are regarding screen time for youth, but they're talking about children between the ages of 2 and 5. So here's some of what comes from it. So the parents reported in their own distress about the demands of child rearing and also how long their child watched TV, played video games on a console or device like a tablet and a smartphone. If parents regularly offer digital device to their child to calm them or to stop a tantrum, that child won't learn how to regulate their emotions. It all stands to reason, doesn't it? But I spend too much time with my phone in my hand. I probably spend too much time on a screen. And you know as well as I do, you can walk past a group of young people, teenagers, and for the most part, they'll all have their eyes down in their phone. And it also happens when we see people behind the wheel. So this is not something in an effort to be preachy. This is just information shared after there was a pretty significant deep dive into this exact issue. Here's one of the quotes, though, coming that acknowledges that it is difficult to be a parent. I'll see if I can find it. Screens used as a calming strategy become a vicious cycle, right? This is an interview with one of the researchers. It often works very well in the short term, but what we learn from the studies like this is that in the long term, it actually creates more of a problem because then it's harder for that child to learn any new skills without the screen. Just for information purposes, because I get it. Having been there, it can be a very difficult stretch of time, especially if you have a very hyperactive toddler in the house. So maybe, just maybe, we'll have to find different strategies because, when anything is a short-term relief and some of the immediate gratification, sometimes we set ourselves up for even worse outcomes into the future. So what do you think? And then you just mentioned eating disorders and screen time. So also the complications with youth and social media. There's research that is really quite clear about the impact on youth and things like, being exposed to the unreal body types that you see. People have carefully digitally crafted their body to look out of this world. And of course, what we see online, generally speaking, people only post at their very best moments. Their lavish lifestyle and the travel and their tan or their muscularity or whatever the case may be. When in reality, we all have some pretty sloppy moments in time. So even when we talk about how our youth are exposed to what they see in social media, it could lead to things like eating disorders. And I heard Brian speaking to an issue where there was a young fella, I think he was 18 years of age. He got caught going 162 kilometers an hour, and the car was full of teenagers. So the consequences here are pretty quite clear. He got a pretty hefty ticket, the car impounded, and of course, who owned the car? One of his parents. So I guess that gives us all the reason in the world to speak with our teenagers, and I'd speak with my 20-odd-year-olds about what happens if and when you're speeding. Just imagine the trouble that kid is in. Coming home with that ticket and mom or dad knowing that their car has been impounded. I guess that leads to a pretty significant, straightforward conversation. You want to take it on? Let's go. And also, the province has been looking for feedback from the general public regarding things like smoking. So the issue here is they're talking about doing what they did in PEI, moving the legal purchase age from 19 to 21, and also the potential for a generation free of smokers. Now, prohibition has never, ever, ever worked. I mean, if you can't buy smokes legally, they'll buy them out of the back of a van behind the Trades College. So in PEI, they proposed a ban on tobacco sales earlier this month to anyone born after a set date. For example, the 1st of January of 2009. And of course, that has the aspirations of a smoke-free generation, and it certainly probably will curb the number of young people who pick up the habit. But there you go. In the world of smoking, In the province of Quebec, in the Superior Court, there's been a ruling against big tobacco. Billions of dollars could be afforded to those who joined the class. 5 years later, nothing has happened. In Manitoba, they're expecting their successful lawsuit to result in billions of dollars flowing to that province. They talk about maybe some monies will be coming sometime during this summer or late into the year. And in this province, we apparently had entertained a similar lawsuit against big tobacco. No earthly idea what became of it. Is well over a decade ago that was apparently filed, but if you want to take on that particular issue, we can do it. All right, Marine Atlantic. We're anticipating a conversation this morning with Daryl Mercer. He's the communication director with Marine Atlantic, so we can talk about the delays and the status of the new vessel. And of course, you read a story from Placentia. By this time of the year, we would have seen a ton of tourists make their way from Argentia into beautiful Placentia, and of course, that hasn't happened. So still pretty foggy about when the Alasunu is going to be on the Argentia run. For communities like Placentia, if you land in Port aux Basques, the likelihood of people pit stopping into Placentia is reduced dramatically. So we can take that on with Mr. Mercer, see if we can't get a status update and exactly what is wrong with that particular ferry, who's bearing the cost of the repairs. We can also talk about compensation. Then there's the issue regarding the immediate cease of the 65% cost recovery model through fees and fares, what have you. I guess it's as fundamental as more money coming from the federal government, but we'll see if we can't get a little bit of a better breakdown from Mr. Mercer when he joins us on the program. Okay. Politics comes with very careful calculations regarding timing, optics, and what have you. And we have arrived at a place where if it's not a party you support, then they can do nothing right. It's pretty much as simple as that. Yesterday, the Premier spoke out and is looking for an immediate meeting with the Federal Fisheries Minister, Diane Liboutier, regarding the decisions surrounding Northern Cod. So similarly, when the Premier was pushing back on the carbon tax increase on the 1st of April, we're taking the feds to court over equalisation. And of course, if you don't support the Liberals, then you are just calling this politics and nothing else. But at the exact same time, many people in the province, if not most of the people in the province, wanted the province to speak up about carbon tax increase, wanted the province to deal with the equalisation formula, wanted the province to speak out about Northern Cod. And it is a problematic decision. It can be applauded by other members, including Minister O'Regan and others here in the province, but the rationale for has been pretty flimsy, in my own personal opinion. So the Premier is looking for a particular meeting. Is there an opportunity for the genie to be stuffed back in that bottle? Reversal of decision? You know, we're still looking for some clarification as to why an increase, and a fairly modest increase of 5,000 metric tons to bring us up to 18,000, why that apparently has to automatically trigger a lift of a moratorium and the reinstatement of a commercial fishery versus an expanded stewardship fishery. Nobody's got an answer to that question. But they all lean on that as being the reason why. If you want to take it on, we can do it. A couple of interesting stories on the federal front. I've tried to follow along with all of these intelligence-related matters and the Hague Commission, foreign interference, the potential for some parliamentarians to be wittingly or semi-wittingly working with bad actors, say from China, India, or wherever. We still don't really know exactly what's happening there. But for 7 years, David Vigneault has been the director of the Canadian Security Intelligence Service. He's stepping down. So he's became the 9th director of CSIS back in June of 2017. CSIS actually celebrates its 40th anniversary the 16th of this month. No word as to who's going to be the replacement, but Mr. Vigneault has been in public service quite a long time. Senior roles at the Canada Border Services Agency and at the Privy Council Office. You know, he rang the alarm many, many times. He put up the red flags countlessly. So people have pointed a finger of blame at Vigneault, but it seems to me the real problem is not intelligence gathering, our role in the Five Eyes, it's how the information has been disseminated, and whether it be the Prime Minister's office or others, took it seriously. And, you know, they sat on a lot of important information without telling the Canadian general public about what is actually going on. And so I guess Mr. Vigneault has just thrown his hands in the air. Hey, I wasn't taken seriously. Now I'm in the crossfire, so enough is enough. And it doesn't seem to me that it's a CSIS problem. It seems to me that there wasn't the required communication between CSIS and the RCMP. There wasn't the amount of information taken seriously at the governmental level. But Mr. Vigneault is stepping down. And if you want to take on anything in that envelope, which I think is still a huge story, we can do it. All right. Today, for those of you who are eligible to go out and qualify for, it's GST Day. So the stories are out there about just how much money people can get, and if you're eligible, it'll find its way into your bank account today, or the check in the mail. So when I saw some of the social media references to that yesterday, and of course this is just another reflection about where we are politically, So was giving us back our own money. You're right. The GST that's been collected is because you have paid tax on whatever products that you purchased. And, of course, some of the references were to liberal scum and that kind of stuff. The GST was created by who? The Progressive Conservative Premier Prime Minister of the country, Brian Mulroney, on the 1st of January 1991. Initially, it was 7%. It's been rolled back twice, of course, sits at 5% now, blended with the provincial tax, and that harmonises the HST. So in 2017, 2018 is the most recent numbers I could find, but I was very quickly going after it this morning. During that year, 11.7% of total federal government revenue in that year was directly related to the GST. So you'll get your check today if you are indeed eligible. A couple of quick ones before we get to you. Where is this story? I want to say congratulations to the 7 people from this province, one posthumously awarded the Order of Canada. So the list includes Buddy Wassey's name and the other fellas. So that's Kevin Blackmore, Wayne Chalk, and Ray Johnson have been invested as members of the Order of Canada. James Igliorti, the first Inuk judge in the province, has been awarded the Officer of the Order. Moving down the list, Dr. Conor Maguire, radiologist and nuclear medicine specialist, the first quadriplegic to complete medical school in Canada, was invested as a member of the Order. I know Dr. Maguire, who grew up in the neighbourhood, and the late Robert Shea, Dr. Robert Shea. Extremely sad news of his recent passing. He led the Canadian Education and Research Institute for Counselling, and he's received the Meritorious Service Medal for the Civil Division. Barry Furlong from Mount Pearl awarded the Sovereign Medal for Volunteers to work with seniors and youth in the province, the Navy League of Canada, and the Royal Canadian Legion. So congratulations to all. And that was extremely sad when Rob Shea, they found him dead. Okay, a couple of very quick ones before we get to you. I want to say happy 50th anniversary to Lindsay and Lynette Rowe out in Chanscove. Apparently they tuned into the program. One of your friends sent me a note this morning asking me to pass that on. So happy 50th to you. And talk about a little soccer fundraiser that you might be interested in, taking place up at the Mundy Pond Regatta, Saturday, the July the 6th from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. This on behalf of the 13-year-old St. John Soccer 13-year-old team. They've got a planned travel going to the UK. So they're going to go to Leicester, train with professional players, watch some pro games, take a few traipses around the UK. So if you want to support that particular travel team, Mundy Pond Regatta, tomorrow from 11 to 5. Hot dogs, $3. Hamburgers, $4. Cheeseburgers, $5. Water or pop, $2. All right, we're on Twitter. We're VOCM Openline. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. Now, of course, you know, the topic is entirely up to you. So pick up the phone during the break and we'll speak to you right on the heels of this. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's begin this morning on line number 1. Say good morning to a good friend of the program, oil and gas advocate, Rob Strong. Good morning, Rob. You're on the air.
Hey, good morning, Patty, and happy Friday.
The very happiest of Fridays to you as well.
It's a great day. Great day to be alive.
Yes, sir. You got that right. Where are we starting this morning, Rob?
Well, I'd like to start on and tell you what an exciting day I had this week. I had a chance to tour the West White Rose concrete gravity system down in Argentia, and boy, was I ever impressed. This thing, which built by Newfoundlanders in Newfoundland, 8 million man-hours. Imagine 8 million man-hours and not one lost time incident. I think if you look at projects around the world, you'll find that record is, or that amount, or that lack of accidents is got to be a record. But it stands, Patty, 145 meters. And for those of us that think in feet, I think that's about 435 feet. So that's equivalent to a 40-story building. And I was up at the top of it and looking down. What a complex structure. And the top sides are not even on it yet. So, wow, I can't tell you how an old guy like me can be so impressed to see a structure like that when you realize it's got, weighs 200,000 tons or so. It's going to be towed out in early next, I think May of next year, towed out. Towed up the bay a little bit. They're going to put 100,000 tons of ballast material in it, and then tow it out and install it in the White Rose field. So an engineering marvel and a construction project that we in Newfoundland should be very proud of. It's, as I say, if you can do 8-9 million person hours and not have a lost time accident, that is an amazing record. And one more little bit of trivia for you.
Sure.
If you took the rebar, reinforcing steel that goes in the concrete, because as you can appreciate, there's a lot of rebar, and if you stretched it out, there's 285 kilometers of stretched rebar. So that's where that sort of made my week. It's 80,000 cubic meters of concrete, all batch plant there, and again done by us in Newfoundland, done by skilled tradespeople. So it's something that we should all be proud of. And we should look forward, obviously, to next summer when it gets towed out and eventually gets mated with the topsides and begins to produce oil. So, that's where I wanted to start.
Well, as you called it, an engineering marvel, I'm still a little bit, I'm still wondering how they actually tow something of that enormity. And you mentioned how much ballast is going to be part of that that tow, but that's just fascinating to me. I'd love to see that in action. And of course, the issue regarding no lost time on a pretty dangerous work site doing that type of work is really remarkable. And, talk about us doing it. Project lead is actually a very young man named Mike Rodofsky, terrific rugby player, and obviously a top flight engineer.
Oh, no question. And the axle rack, I got to meet a couple of the axle iron workers out there, and boy, do they know their stuff. But are they ever safety conscious? I was escorted up the elevator and off the elevator to the top of the platform, and any time I looked around, there was somebody there watching me, and somebody there had the hard hats and the safety harness and the safety boots and unslipped flooring and so on. So the commitment to safety is evident, obviously, if you work that kind of that number of hours and don't have an accident. So that was a great thrill for me today, being in this business for a long time. I've had a chance to see some platforms in the North Sea and some obviously Hibernia and Hebron here, but this was amazing. This stand up the top of a 400 foot building and look down, and you can look right up the bay and out the bay, and you can also see all the infrastructure around the graving dock, and it's going to be interesting to see when they open it up and they, let's hope the thing floats, Patty.
Yeah, let's hope so.
We're in big trouble.
I'd love to do that, but 400 feet is not for me. I can't do it.
Yeah, you can't close your eyes at that stage.
No, you certainly cannot. Obviously, it speaks to the fact that Synovus is still all in.
Sorry?
Synovus is still obviously all in with that type of investment. How much does this cost?
So.
Do we know how much it cost?
Well, what people don't realize, of course, is that this platform is not going to be a production platform. This platform is strictly a drilling platform. And as they drill the oil, it'll be transferred back to the C-Rose FPSO. So when people try to compare it to Hibernia and Hebron, which are both drilling and production platforms, it's not fair. As I say, this one is a smaller deck, albeit some 40,000-ton deck, but it's primarily meant to drill, and then as the oil comes up from the ground, they're going to transfer it over to the C-Rose FPSO.
Right.
So, second thing exciting this week is the arrival of the Hercules. Anybody who lives down the southern shore, drives by Bay of Bulls, at least that's last Sunday it was there, and she's here for a 2-well program for Equinor. Hopefully it's going to re-enter a well called Sitka, which has been, I think this is the third go at this particular well, but hopefully they'll come up with favorable results, and finally maybe we can get an FID, a financial investment decision, to get the go ahead. You have to give. And I'm not always a fan of oil companies, believe me, but you have to give Equinor credit. They're really working hard, both by their drilling of wells and another thing I'll talk about in a minute. But they're really, really working hard to make Beta Nord work. And obviously we've all got our fingers crossed. And again, Patty, I guess if you're not in the industry, you don't realize it, but there's some 64 wells that have to be drilled for Beta Nord to begin producing. So 64 wells is a lot of wells. So prior to even getting in production, there's a whack of activity that has to go on, because remember, each well probably takes 60 to 90 days. It takes an oil rig with 90 people on a normal POB, persons on board, 90 people ashore, 3 supply boats, 2 helicopters, mud companies, cement companies, diving companies, and whatever. So Beta Nord represents a significant opportunity for for Newfoundland, for St. John's, for the oil and gas community, and the supporting industries for the hotels, the restaurants, the rent-a-cars, the retail sort of things. So pretty encouraged and pretty excited about this drilling program this summer. As I say, they're going to do 2 wells, and one's called Sitka, the other one appropriately is called Bake Apple, but how they come up with these names, I don't know. So that's interesting.
And it's over 2 years ago since Stephen Guilbeault released it from its environmental assessment. And, of course, Minister Guilbeault has a very distinct environmental protectionist background.
Now, you're kidding me.
Yeah, he did go on to say, though, it will be more and more difficult into the future to see oil fields approved off our shore. But, of course, Equinor included some 136 mitigating issues or factors into their plan. So I think that was like early April of 2022. So I don't know exactly what's going on with trying to make the business model work. We're talking somewhere in the neighborhood of $14 billion was the last number I've heard bandied about. And there's one issue, given the fact it's outside our economic protective zone, I'd love to know exactly where this one stands. And that's regarding Article 82 of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, which means basically there's going to be hundreds of millions of dollars paid to developing countries. And of course, the province says we're not interested. The feds said we're not doing it. But the country of Canada signed on. Newfoundland and Labrador did not sign on to that particular UN declaration. And of course, Equinor doesn't want to pay it. So I wonder what kind of stumbling block that might represent.
We'll have to wait and see. The royalty rate payable to the UN for activity outside the 200-mile limit begins at 1%, but can go up to 7%. Right. So that's a significant amount of money. Back to your question about Guilbeault, I say, who says Guilbeault is going to be around for much longer? I took some time to look at the Conservatives' policy on oil and gas, at least offshore oil and gas, recently, and I think that if we have a change of government, which, if you believe the speculation, we may indeed have a change of government, I think that the rigid attitude that Guilbeault and Wilkinson in particular, but the Liberal government in particular, I think we're going to see a change, and we'll probably see more activity offshore, because remember, Exxon is out there drilling as we speak in the Orphan Basin, so that's again a frontier area out there. And these wells are a couple $100 million a well, so. Maybe they know something we don't.
Yeah, rent on the Hercules semi-submersible isn't cheap either.
No, I would say she's close to $500,000 a day, and then you've got 3 supply boats at probably $60,000 a day plus fuel. And then, as I said earlier, you got the companies that supply drilling mud and cement and tubulars and pipe and catering and logging and testing and so on. So $1 million a day is probably a very realistic figure for a drilling program.
And of course, Bay du Nord, as you've mentioned many times, is not one well. At this moment in time, it's 8. And of course, the amount of subsea work that would be involved is extraordinary, most of which will be done by Newfoundland and Labrador Company. So there's a lot on the line there. Interesting point to make about Stephen Guilbeault. And you're right, if you believe the polls, and it looks like the government may indeed change hands. The Conservatives talk a lot about natural resources and on leasing LNG and the like. But I'll add to it is that we already have a project that may indeed have billions of barrels of recoverable oil, and their break-even is at $35, and they can't make the business model work yet. So it's not just about green lights coming from the Environment Minister. It's still going to be business model stuff, and it always will be. So that's pretty fascinating to me.
Oh, yeah, and I agree. I mean, there are other issues one has to consider. The future of oil. What's the price of oil going to be in 10 years' time? We don't know.
No, we don't. Very last one, because I do have to get going. This is an interesting question from a listener. And I mean, I know you've been in the industry for decades. Where and how did you get your start, and when was it?
I started when I was a baby in 1979. I'm very lucky. I happen to know a guy called Dick Spellacy, who used to be a squash buddy of mine. Dick was the president of Crosby Offshore. So I said, Dick, I'd like to get it. At that stage, I was selling groceries in a grocery store down in Springdale Street, making $7,000 a year. And I used to be a squash buddy of Dick's, so I said, Dick, can you help me get a job in this business? And Dick finally found a position for me, so I went to work with Crosby Offshore in 1979, not knowing a thing about the business, but no different than, hey, there's a dozen of us. I can still name the guys that I work with. We knew nothing in 79. So anyway, I spent 5 years or 6 years with Crosby Offshore. Great 5 year, what a learning experience. I always say I got my training holding on to Dick Spellecy's coattails because we traveled the world. We went to Norway several times. We went to Mexico or back and forth to Calgary, to Houston. And so I got a chance to see things and meet people and learn the industry. And when Crosby Offshore went bankrupt, basically, in 1986, I was fortunate enough to get the job with Chess Penny at PennyCon with a job description that said, Rob, I think this oil business is going to happen, and I want to be part of it. And that was my job description. Had 10 very pleasant years with Chess and got to travel, and we did the joint venture with Openline for the shuttle tankers and the offshore loading systems and developed bay bulls and did a lot of stuff there. And then after 10 years with Chess, I went to work with my buddy Fraser Edison, who at that stage had the joint venture with Doris and was looking at the development of Hibernia. And finally in 2010, 2011, I decided to hang my shingle out, and lo and behold, I'm still at it. So that in 2 minutes is how I got in the business and where I've gone since. Final comment, though, because I'm keeping you, a very positive sign for the Bay du Nord is an expression of interest that was released last week. And I quote, expression of interest, pre-qualification reference, seabed survey, environmental survey, and soil investigation for 2025 in the Flemish Pass. So as I said earlier, you can't blame Equinor for trying to make this project happen. This is a very, very extensive subsea survey. They want to take some core samples to see what the bottom looks like. They want to check out the bottom for corals, for obstructions. Very, very extensive, and it's in between 500 and 1,200 meters of water, so it means that the whole field is going to be covered, and it should give Equinor and its partner, which is BP, a good understanding of what the actual ocean floor looks like, which is obviously needed to know before you start designing anchoring systems and wellhead structures and that sort of stuff. So lots of good news. Let's hope it turns into the FID that we talk about in my business, financial investment decision. Once they commit that, then we're off to the races.
Appreciate the time as usual, Rob. Have a great weekend.
You too, Patty. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And, speaking of final investment decisions, they're obviously looming regarding things like World Energy GH2. And that all boils down to the federal government, and they're dragging their heels on some of these so-called green credits. So there's a definition that needs to be associated with that particular industry. So the subsidies go from 15% to 40%. And, of course, they don't flow until these projects are operational. So it's not upfront monies. But that's still looming. And the federal government, they talk big game on these types of programs, but where are the details? So there's not going to be any formal lenders, out there that are going to talk about business model support if we don't really know what the business model entails and what type of monies are involved and where the tax credits lie. Anyway, let's take a break. When we come back, Northern Cod, and then we're speaking with you on a topic of your choosing. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 4. Say good morning to the Vice President of Sustainability and Engagement with Ocean Choice International. That's Carrie Bunnell. Good morning, Carrie. You're on the air.
Hey, Patty. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Thanks for asking. How about you?
Very well, thanks. Patty, just wanted to call in, and provide a bit of a response from an offshore sector standpoint to the debate on Northern Cod. If you perhaps give me a couple minutes, I'll give you a sort of 2 or 3 key points, from our perspective, and happy to get into a discussion related to stewardship versus commercial and other things. So just by way of a little bit of a background from our standpoint, on this topic, we are fully supportive of the inshore fishery in this province. said it time and time again, we have a relationship, a very clear relationship, mutually beneficial relationship. So we're fully supportive of the inshore fisheries, certainly in this province. On the topic of northern cod specifically, obviously we've been very consistent in our position over the years, and certainly in recent months, that we support priority access to the inshore sector on northern cod in an initial commercial reopening, but not exclusive access. And even if you look at the materials circulated over the past couple of days by the FFAW in terms of historical policy, historical policy is really on our side. If you look at, the FFAW will cite the 1979 conference in Corner Brook, talked again about priority versus exclusivity, and actually defined priority to the inshore to be 2/3 inshore and 1/3 offshore. And I'm not going to do a deep dive into this, but the Kirby Task Force report had similar findings in 1982 and 83. The most recent policy on file, I think, is 2004, when talks about reopening closed fisheries, historic shares will generally be recognized. Our sector from 1977 to 92, I think, fished about 48% of the northern cod resource, so significant history in this particular fishery. So our difference is not on priority, our difference is on exclusivity, and we think policy is on our side. Second point I wanted to make, I guess, is, the FFAW spent time trying to sort of brand our sector as the corporate fleet. But, the reality, and Alberta was on last week talking about this, but really the offshore sector in Newfoundland and Labrador are really family-run businesses. You got the Wareham family, fifth generation in cod. They've kept the lights on cod for the last couple of decades leading up to sort of where we are today. And, I work for the Sullivan family from Calvert, built up a very successful business over the last 2 decades. Among the offshore sector, we employ approximately 2,000 people in the province. Among the larger private sector employers, we are rural Newfoundland and Labrador, just the way the inshore sector and fishermen in the province are rural Newfoundland and Labrador. It's mutually beneficial from that standpoint. Our vessels are Newfoundland and Labrador owned vessels. They're crewed by Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. They're just larger vessels that go to sea for a longer period of time. These are people that live in rural parts of the province. We have a long history, and you would know this, of deep sea trawlermen from places like, the Burin Peninsula with a long history, the Burgeo, Franceway, the Port-au-Port Peninsula. If you think of the offshore shrimp sector, we have hubs in, the St. Anthony region and southern Labrador. Really proud people that go to sea for extended periods of time and contribute back to those economies upon their return. They're just every bit as important as an inshore fisherman. They're equally important in terms of contributing to rural Newfoundland and Labrador. Specifically on this northern cod decision, and there's been some commentary that, the offshore quota won't benefit Newfoundland and Labrador. Well, the reality is that approximate 1,000 metric tons, a little over 6% allocated to the offshore sector, that's going to be fished by Newfoundland and Labrador vessels. About 98% of the offshore shares are held by Newfoundland and Labrador companies. So basically, it's all fished by Newfoundland and Labrador companies on our boats, crewed by our fishermen. And furthermore, and there's been some discussion on processing, but the reality on northern cod, unique compared to some other species like yellowtail, which smaller fish, more difficult for land-based processing. Cod are, certain pack mixes of cod are actually ideal for land-based processing. So you can expect cod coming in from the offshore sector to be landed and processed in large part in the province as well.
And not processed at sea?
Well, there'd be an element of processing at sea. So you would take a product, and we have factories on our vessels where you convert a product to a headed and gutted form in terms of cod. But then when that cod comes ashore, there are optimal sizes of that species that are ideal for land-based processing. We've had a relationship with Icewater on 3PS cod, where we do have an offshore fishery, very small scale. We've had a relationship with Icewater going back many, many years, where when we go out and fish late fall, early winter in 3PS, the product that comes in, the pack mixes that work for Icewater, they go directly to Icewater for further processing at a time of the year when you don't have inshore production, and it enables a company like Icewater to have longer operating seasons. Icewater has had to rely, and Alberta, I think, covered this last week, for the past couple of decades on importing frozen at sea cod from places like Iceland and Norway. And in this particular occurrence now, with the reopening of a northern cod fishery, the opportunity exists for product that we're producing to come to shore to reduce his reliance on importing foreign cod and utilize that in plants around the province, right? In particular, Icewater. But as the stock grows, and we hope it does, and the opportunity expands, there'll be more opportunities for further processing, including ourselves over time. So that's been happening, and we would expect that to continue to happen here. The last point I'll make, and then sort of open it up to you, Patty, is the trawling or dragging conversation, which I've got a significant issue with how it's being sort of structured by the FFAW. Bottom trawling is food production. That's the reality, right? Like any other form of food production. And in the case of fisheries, bottom trawling is responsible for about 25% of wild-caught fish production globally. A large portion of those fisheries, particularly in North America and Europe, are well-managed fisheries. They're Marine Stewardship Council certified to that gold standard. And trawling is really an acceptable form of gear use in cod fisheries with pros and cons, just like gill nets would have pros and cons. It's a bit of a mug's game to get into a discussion on the pros and cons. The reality is, I think the world has changed a lot since the moratorium, whether you're fishing with gill nets or whether you're fishing with trawling. And, most of the world's well-managed cod fisheries right now are harvested with trawls as a primary gear. Iceland, you have callers calling in on a semi-regular basis talking about, this model in Iceland that we want to aspire to. Well, 50% of Iceland's cod production is trawl-based, mobile gear, or as the FFAW would say, dragging. It's one of the most well-managed fisheries in the world. If you go back the last 40 years, probably 40 to 45% of removals have been trawl-based, hundreds of thousands of metric tons. And it's the gift that keeps on giving in Iceland in terms of sustainable fisheries. What they focus on is managing removals as their primary tool, keeping fishing effort at a reasonable level to ensure the sustainability of that stock. So that's, I think, a really important point. And again, trawling today is not what it was 30 years ago. People keep talking about repeating past mistakes. Well, I don't think this generation should be burdened by the sins of the last generation, no matter what sector we're in, whether we're trawling or whether in the gillnet fishery or any other particular fishery. Today on our boats, we have 100% independent observer coverage on our boat, independent observation on every fishery that we have on ground fish. We have vessel monitoring systems where DFO can monitor where we are on a daily basis, on a regular basis. We have daily hail requirements that have to go in. Upon landing, we have dockside inspection to ensure what we said we had in our hail reports is actually what we've had. We've got marine protected areas to protect vulnerable ecosystems. There are spawning closures. In 3PS, there's a spawning closure. I'm sure that'll be a dialogue in terms of northern cod. Restrictions on bycatch and small fish protocols. We've made major advancements in gear technology in terms of looking at reducing the footprint. I mean, we actually, in terms of trawling, probably about less than 1% of the bottom is actually contacted overall. And I've heard some calls in about bycatch issues related to snow crab and other stocks. Listen, we're not motivated for that. I mean, snow crab is a critically important fishery for us. We have no interest in that. So, we would work on management measures to ensure that those issues are avoided, minimized, and avoided at all costs. So, and the last point I'll make on trawling, I guess, a significant portion or a reasonable portion of the FFAW members also have mobile gear fishing. I mean, the big debate on Unit 1 redfish, the Gulf fleet over there, they're fishing with trawls. The inshore shrimp fleet, they're fishing with trawls. John Efford Jr. heads up, I think, still the East Coast Otter Trawlers Association. That's a trawl-based fishery. It is the same gear, and to argue that one of our larger boats is going to have a greater impact than two or three smaller vessels, it doesn't hold water as a legitimate argument. But the reality is, to close the loop on this, Patty, is advancements have been made in the inshore sector with respect to that. Advancements have been made in the offshore sector, and we're far more sustainable today than we've ever been in the past, and it's foremost on our mind, and will be in terms of northern cod as well. So, wanted to make a few of those points, I guess, and happy to answer any rebuttals on those points or get into other conversations related to stewardship or whatever.
Well, I don't think there's much of a point for me talking about the politics about the timing of it, because there's no threshold to move from stewardship to commercial fishery, yet the government continues to say that there is some sort of relationship there, which I can't find anyone to back that up. So I won't bother with the politics with you, but there was a lot that you just offered. Okay.
I can speak to that point. Just maybe I'll take 30 seconds on the stewardship versus the commercial fishery, because I think there is logic behind it and justification behind it. I mean, the stewardship fishery is really a post-moratorium construct that was put in place when the stock was in the critical zone to maintain some level of fishing removals. This stock has now been determined based on a recent assessment by DFO, and there's a really nice publication that just came out from the Marine Institute, actually, I can forward to you, that sort of covers this ground. But this stock has now been determined to be in the cautious zone of the precautionary approach framework, and DFO manages stocks based on critical, cautious, and healthy zone. So this stock has been determined now to be in the cautious zone of the PA framework and has been for the last 7 to 8 years. Northern cod, the total biomass on northern cod is over 500,000 metric tons. It's the second largest groundfish stock in Atlantic Canada. It's the third largest cod stock in the world. There's really, Patty, there's no construct like a stewardship fishery that I know that exists anywhere else. And it's just, it'll be very difficult. It's not about the quota increase, even if you maintain the quota where it was. The idea that you can maintain a stewardship fishery for a stock that's in the cautious zone of the precautionary approach framework, given where it is and where it has been for the past 7 to 8 years, doesn't hold water basically on any domestic or international standard. And that's my understanding, and I think that's a fair interpretation of it.
But I think DFO has also said the quiet part out loud, and I'm not a scientist, but going from critical to cautious seems to me to be kind of misleading, to be honest, because simply changing the model data points from 1983 to 1954, and DFO quite clearly said it did not put any more fish in the water. So just a label of critical to cautious to justify trigger a commercial fishery seems to be a bit of a disingenuous point that some people are making. So let's get into some of the things you said. Sure. The real pro for bottom trawling, of course, large volumes, more affordable price. Mm-hmm. Okay, but you say it's not your motivation to interrupt the snow crab and or the sea floor. And it's one thing to have a monitor on deck, but that doesn't include what happens underwater. It's one thing to have an inspector at the wharf, but that doesn't include what goes on underwater. So whether it be with bycatch or juvenile fish or sea coral or sponges or snow crab, may be unintended and might not be the motivation, but it is indeed a part and parcel of trawling the bottom, is it not?
It is part and parcel of trawling the bottom, but yes, independent observation does exist on the boat. Everything that comes up is recorded. All of our discards are recorded. We have protocols that we have to follow. Whether we're fishing domestically or we're fishing out in the NAFO regulatory area, if we hit a certain percentage of bycatch based on the conservation harvesting plans that we have in place, we have to move 10 nautical miles. If we hit it again, we have to leave the area. There are provisions in place to deal with these measures, Patty, and in terms of corals and sensitive environments, we've been focused heavily on protecting those, and the Government of Canada has as well with closed areas. So there are a lot of measures that have been put in place to minimize bycatch in mobile gear fisheries. And again, any form of fishing has its impact. There are issues with gill nets, historical, fishing of cod traps as an example. I grew up into cod fishery. My family, cod fishermen, major issues around selectivity. Every gear type has its pros and cons. But the focus from our standpoint is, fishing is food production. It is an extractive industry in that sense, and there will be impacts. It's about managing and mitigating those impacts. And a conversation for another day, but if we wanted to get into a debate on, impacts of fishing versus other forms of food production, like farming, like dairy, like beef, I think our sector fares really, really well in that debate as well in terms of CO2 emissions, in terms of biodiversity loss. I think we fare quite well. And the proof's in the pudding. If you look at fisheries like cod in Iceland, they've been able to manage a trawl-based fishery for a generation with no real negative impacts. They've managed it. And I think the last point I'll make on this, the key from our standpoint is good science, good data, and managing removals. So, this particular decision that was made by government, we're looking at fishing mortality in this fishery. I think the estimate is about 6% of F. F will be about 6%. Now, in Iceland, they have their F is probably around 20%, maybe a little higher. Now, their stock is in the healthy zone. So I think we've made in my view, and I think even the FFAW would argue with this, 6% is very conservative. It probably could be a little higher. The key is to monitor that and to manage that. And you can adjust F up or down on a year-to-year basis based on the science information that comes back. So, if the survey comes back next year and it's trending downward, you have the ability to sort of, put some controls on F to constrain that more and bring it down more and reduce removals. If the biomass is up, you have conversely, you have the ability to go up. So I think good management is focusing on fishing removals. And I think, going back again, people talking about the past, we had a period in the late 80s, early 90s before the moratorium where I think we had F a couple of years at 50%. I mean, you just can't compare what was done pre-moratorium to where we are today. We are much more responsible as industry. I think government is much more responsible. Nobody wants to repeat past mistakes. I think, we're all on the same page on that.
And I mean, it's also not a zero-sum game. Comparing the farming industry to the fishery, it's not picking one or the other. They all have to coexist for the obvious reasons.
Of course.
I'm really late for the break, but I appreciate your time, Kerry. We'll pick this up again another day.
Thanks, Paddy. Appreciate it.
Take care. Bye-bye. Kerry Bunnell, VP Sustainability Engagement with Ocean Choice. Break time. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Good morning, caller. You're on the air. Good morning, line number 2. You're on the air.
Hi, this is Brian Chafe calling about the Her Majesty's Penitentiary. I'm an inmate down here there now, and I just wanted to basically call in just to let everybody on the outside know what's going on down here. It's basically inhumane what they're doing to people. There's no air conditioning in the cell. There's mold. There's dust. I'm allergic myself. I'm allergic to dust and mold myself, and I have asthma. And I flipped over my mattress, and I found basically black mold, in my mattress. And I asked the correction officers I told the corrections officers about it, and they basically just didn't even really do anything about it. They just left it there, and you can't leave your canteen. Nothing on the floor. The rodents are coming in, tearing the bags apart. There's no air conditioning. Nobody can see a doctor. You can't even get a pillow. No nothing. The bugs in the wild, calling out the wilds, hundreds of bugs. It's out of hand, right?
Well, the conditions are deplorable. No doubt about that. Brian, what does that mean for how the inmates not only feel but interact? Because it's already a tense situation when you're in a prison, I would think. But does it make it even worse? Does it feel like a tinderbox, like something's going to explode?
Yeah, obviously it builds tension, right? Because everyone's just they're sick of it. They're sick of the conditions down here, and no one's doing nothing about it. We're calling citizens rep, we're calling our lawyers. They're doing what they can. And nothing's being done about it, right? We'll wake up some days and we're locked in for the full day just because we're short-staffed. We didn't do anything. The whole jail's locked in just because some staff didn't show up. And there's literally no air conditioning. You're locked in a cement box. You can't breathe. You literally can't breathe in the cell. I woke up about 10 to 15 times in the middle of the night, and I had to lie down on the floor and basically breathe under the door to try to get some air. It's ridiculous.
How long you been in?
I've been in here since May 2nd, but I was in here for about 18 months before that. There from June 2022 to December 2023, and it's just getting worse and worse, right?
How frequently can you get outside?
I haven't been outside once since I've been here, and the last 18 months I was here, I probably got outside twice.
Are you able to see your lawyer? Because that's one of the concerns people had, is that lawyers were even saying, look, I can't have access to my client, and consequently that is a real problem when we talk about fair evaluation in the court of law. So are you able to see either your family and or your lawyer?
Well, for a while there, the visiting room was shut down because there was mold in it, and no one could come down and visit you. And lawyers, they try to contact you when you have court, for example, and they can't get through because there's lawns are busy or no guards are answering. And it's just frustrating, right? Just trying to get forward and try to get this over with, and you literally can't even talk to your lawyer about it. And he ends up talking to you when you go down to video court or you go in person, and they said they try to get a hold of you, and they're going to have to postpone to another date and try to get a hold of you before the next day comes, right?
What do you think this means for your eventual release? Because everyone in Her Majesty's Penitentiary is getting out at some point. So the whole concept of maybe we're risking public safety because people may indeed come out worse than when they went in, whether it be because of the conditions or the inability to visit family and the frustration that builds and the lack of programming. So do you think that's a fair assessment that people are quite likely to come out in way worse shape, whether it be with their addiction or their mental wellness and or their proclivity to commit another crime?
Oh, absolutely. I think that this place is supposed to rehabilitate you, and there's no programming, there's no nothing. You are locked on the range, 24 hours a day. You don't get off the range. Like I said, you don't get outside. There's not one open window on the range. There's no air conditioning. I'm looking above me right now, and there's a vent, and it's just full of dust, and there's literally mold in my mattress. And I asked for a new one, and the guard basically just said, yeah, we'll try, and they didn't even do nothing about it, right? And you can't get a pillow, there's nothing. It's crazy. The laundry don't be done sometimes for 14 days, and when you come here, they give you 4 pairs of pants, like about 3 or 4 shirts, and don't even give you 7 pairs of boxers. And sometimes the laundry isn't done for 2 weeks, and you're basically wearing the same dirty clothes. Like you got it. Like it's insane. It's not even like. It's unreal, honestly.
Brian, you know what the public thinks. Like when we have these types of conversations, talk about the conditions, people will inevitably write emails and or put on social media, look, you did the crime you do at the time. It's your own fault that you're in the penitentiary to begin with. And the conditions are deplorable, but they're talking about building a new one. So some people will say, too bad about you. What do you say to those folks?
Yeah, honestly, like a lot of people in here isn't like they're not even guilty of what they're charged with, right? It's basically you're innocent until proven guilty, but to this day, it's basically you're guilty to proven innocent. Like I was in here for 18 months beforehand, and everything got thrown out, like because I wasn't guilty of it. I was basically waiting to prove my innocence, and I literally have a clean adult record. I'm in here now on false allegations as well, just waiting on remand basically, and you can't get bail because the judge just keeps denying you, and you're just basically stuck in here, right? And it's frustrating because, and then you'll just get out after doing so long. Like I just did 18 months, and I had no programming, nothing to help me rehabilitate back into society, and I just felt lost. Like I got out, and I didn't even know what to do. Like,
hopefully things change for the better sooner than later, because again, even from an outside looking in position, the likelihood of people coming out absolutely way worse, and the concept of recidivism, we are possibly jeopardizing public safety by turning our back on what's happening at Her Majesty's and other prisons across the province and across the country. Brian, would you like to say anything else now before we let you go?
No, I appreciate you taking the time to speak to me. I just basically wanted to hopefully someone hears this and something's done about it, because it's just ridiculous, like what's going on down here. And hopefully something's done about it soon, because like you said, it's like no one can rehabilitate back into society if it's like this. Like this is not humane. They said you can't lock a dog in the car with the windows off, but like you're putting a human in a cell with no open windows and no fresh air, no air conditioning, and it's up to 35 degrees Celsius sometimes. So it's not fit, right?
Brian, take good care of yourself.
All right, I appreciate it, Paddy. Take
care, man. Bye-bye. Yeah, I mean, people will indeed turn their back on the criminal element. Look, I get that mindset, right? But there's, I think, larger public questions to be asked about this kind of stuff. And, I mean, it's a fair point. You know, you can be taken to task legally if you put your dog in the car in the summer day with the windows up. And this is what's going on at the penitentiary. Anyway, you want to take anything, want to talk about that? At any angle, we can do it. But when we come back, Daryl Mercer with Marine Atlantic. He's in the queue. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 6. Say good morning to the Communications Director with Marine Atlantic. That's Daryl Mercer. Good morning, Daryl. You're on the air.
Morning, Paddy.
Welcome to the show.
Great, thanks to be here.
So I guess first we need a status update on the Alasunu.
So yesterday afternoon we achieved a milestone that we haven't been able to achieve over the past few weeks. That's the commencement of port trials. So the vessel left the dock in North Sydney, went out into the harbour, did some manoeuvres, and came back in. So that was the first step that we needed to do for the integration and familiarization of our crew with the vessel. Those port trials are scheduled to continue for the next few days. There will be a trip to Port aux Basques in there as well. Again, some anchoring, maneuverability, docking activities, loading activities, and that's part of bringing a new vessel into service. So right now we're progressing in the right direction. If everything stays on this path, then we're very optimistic that the July 10th date can be achieved, but we'll certainly know more over the weekend.
You know, I've heard reference to there's a problem with the lubrication system. What exactly is wrong with the ferry?
So there's two pieces. There's a fuel and lubrication system, and in those lines there was debris. We knew about the debris in the fuel lines during the transit to Canada. We had a plan in place to allow us to rectify that issue. So in our contingency plans, we had originally thought that we could go through the Suez Canal and head to North Sydney in that direction. Unfortunately, with the geopolitical situation in that region, we had to go around the Cape of Good Hope in Africa, which added an extra 3 to 4 weeks to the journey. Because of those delays, that removed that extra 3 to 4 weeks of our contingency planning and allowed us to do some of the troubleshooting. So as we were moving through our plan to fix the fuel lines, the debris that was discovered in the fuel lines, they moved into the lubrication system, and there was the similar type debris in the lubrication system. When we discovered that in early June, there wasn't enough time to have a fix for that system as well while we were doing the repairs to the fuel lines. So that's why we're into these delays. And as they moved through the repair work, unfortunately, the debris kept reoccurring, and they were trying to figure out exactly what was happening. So over the last several days, the technicians, who again are from Stena and Wärtsilä, the engine manufacturer, and other companies from around the world, they've sent their best technicians. They've worked through these issues. They feel that they're in a place right now where the mechanical issues have been addressed, and that's the reason that we're able to start the port trials right now.
So who covers all these costs? Stena?
Well, that'll be a discussion for a later date. It's a new vessel. There's warranties in place, so we'll be certainly working with Stena. They're the vessel owner. They provided the oversight during the construction. So again, that'll be a discussion for another day. But right now, Stena is working hand in hand with us to get that vessel in service. We know there's a financial impact, and we'll have those discussions when we get past this stage.
There's also financial impact on land when it comes to tourism operators. You know, they talk about people canceling because of no rental cars, but they're also talking about what it means for tourism numbers that have been lost, cancellations that have taken place for whether it be their B&B or their restaurants and the predicted revenue flow. So do those conversations happen?
So we've heard from the businesses, particularly in the Placentia-Argentia region, you know, the impacts that they're seeing, and we certainly sympathize with them because they're our tourism partners. You know, they service our customers when they arrive in the area, when they leave the area. All of the businesses are there, work with us in giving a good customer experience. So it's certainly an unfortunate situation. From our perspective, we've provided compensation to our customers that are impacted, and that's been $200 per adult, $100 per child, and that money can be used towards their current trip being rerouted through Port aux Basques, or they could get a voucher for future travel. As it comes to compensation for businesses, that's a larger issue that would take place at a different level than me, but we certainly recognize the impact that it's had on the local business community, and we apologize, but again, we're working to get this vessel in service as soon as possible. Conceptually,
does this hurt Marine Atlantic in overall terms? Because we talk about reliability and people having their travel impacted. I don't know what the total numbers are. When the news first broke, was some 3,300 passengers had to be rebooked on the Port aux Basques run. So do you think this, in the tangential world of people viewing Marine Atlantic as a reliable service, is going to have an impact here?
And Patty, it's a very unfortunate situation because we have a brand new vessel that's coming into service. I've been on the vessel. I've seen it firsthand. It's a beautiful vessel. There's new amenities. There's environmental features. And I think once customers get on board and they experience this vessel, they're really going to like it. The passenger cabins, there's more cabins, and we know that customers have been wanting that. There's more pet-friendly cabins. There's passenger pods, which is a smaller version of a cabin at a cheaper price point. There's so many different amenities, and it's unfortunate right now that the reputation of that vessel has somewhat been tarnished because of these mechanical issues. But once we get the vessel in service and people start to experience it, I think that they will really like the vessel. I think they'll come to accept it as a good addition to our fleet. But again, there's been a challenging period right now of 3 to 4 weeks where customers have been impacted, businesses have been impacted, and we've got to rebuild that trust not only this summer but going forward.
Outside of the 3,300 or whatever the number is of affected passengers, have you seen other cancellations on the Port aux Basques run?
Well, the Port aux Basques run right now is doing quite well because what we've done is we've put an accelerated schedule in place, and every crossing that's been impacted through Argentia, we've added a new crossing through Port aux Basques. So we've actually added capacity during this period where the Alasuna has been going through these delays. The challenge that we have with it is that the accelerated schedule is not something that we can implement for the long term because it involves human resources. Our people are working long shifts. They're staying back and doing extra shifts. They're away from their family for a long period of time. They're putting in long hours. So they're getting tired. And they've told us they're getting tired. And from our perspective, it's only because of their dedication and commitment that we're able to keep this accelerated schedule up. Without this accelerated schedule, then there'll be more challenges presented to us. But again, that's the stage that we'd have to consider if the vessel doesn't go into service. But right now, we feel that we're on the right path.
Is there still a backlog even with the accelerated service?
No backlog in traffic through Port aux Basques. Commercial has been moving because of these extra crossings that we've put on. There's additional capacity for commercial as well. So anybody that did get impacted through Argentia, we put them on a new crossing through Port aux Basques at a time that's as close as possible to their original sailing time, recognizing, Patty, that the inconvenience of putting customers through Port aux Basques versus Argentia, which was their destination, is not ideal. But our priority right now with these challenges is to move the traffic on and off the island. And we have received the question of why wouldn't you reroute a vessel to Argentia instead of having the 3 vessels currently on the Gulf. And it's simple geography and time frames. With our accelerated schedule, we can make a one-way crossing between Port aux Basques and North Sydney in 5.5 hours. The same crossing, a one-way crossing between Argentia and North Sydney, is 16 hours. So we can get extra crossings between Port aux Basques and North Sydney versus Argentia and North Sydney, and that's allowing us to move the traffic. So right now, our priority is to get people on and off the island, get commercial customers on and off the island, and going through Port aux Basques is allowing us to do that.
Are there any compensation dollars associated with people who have to land in Port aux Basques? Maybe their final destination was always going to be Mount Pearl or St. John's?
So, as I mentioned earlier, the Argentia customers that are impacted, they do receive the compensation. So let's say a family of 4, 2 adults, 2 children, it would be $200 an adult, $100 per child. So if it's a family of 4 on a return crossing, that would be approximately $1,200. They can use that towards their Port aux Basques crossing, or they could use it as a travel voucher for the future. The impacts to any Port aux Basques customers who may have had their time slightly adjusted, and there weren't significant impacts to the Port aux Basques customers, but any that had delays of over 5 hours were also given some compensation based upon the delay that they experienced. So again, we're working through this to try to get customers to their destination. Again, recognizing it's not an ideal situation, and that's why we're really focused on trying to get the Alasunu back on the Argentia service as soon as possible.
Okay, let's talk the cost recovery model. Of course, for a long time, it was one of the concerns that many people had was a 65% cost recovery to cover expenses, whether it be through fees, fares, and sales. So now that that's been ceased, as per a letter from the federal minister responsible, and additional funding coming, and they refer to the sole shareholder being the federal government, but that's me and you. I mean, that's all of us. So does that simply mean that with the cost recovery model goes away, there'll just be increased funding, or is there more to the story?
So when we look at the 65% cost recovery model, it's a good news story for Marine Atlantic, and we can go back to the COVID period when we saw a dramatic decrease in passenger traffic. That meant that we had a really difficult time trying to achieve that 65% cost recovery. The Government of Canada worked with us at that point in time, and they recognized that, the current situation with passengers drying up, nobody traveling, it was a challenge for us to try to meet 65%. But what it is, when we look at the money that we received in Budget 2024, along with the now change to the 65% cost recovery model and our internal functions to ensure that we are good stewards of public funds, that means that this year and next year we won't need to increase tariffs. Now, there's still an ongoing conversation that's taking place with the federal government as to what exactly this means for the long term, and those conversations are ongoing. We'll have a clearer picture in the months ahead, again, of what the expectation, because this letter is relatively new. So, again, it's not something that we can totally elaborate on at this point in time, but for the immediate term, we know that there won't be any tariff increases this year or next year.
Yeah, 2 short paragraphs on such a complex issue. It's certainly void of some significant detail. Very quickly, I think you've answered this one, but this from a listener. Talking about the trials and testing by class surveyors after the vessel was launched, were they, Marine Atlantic present and Stena present?
So in the shipyard, this is a fully certified vessel by class societies. The inspections took place at the yard. Stena provided oversight. Marine Atlantic, it's not our vessel. We leased it from Stena, so Stena did the oversight. We had some people that were hired as contractors on our behalf to participate in this process. But unfortunately, I think all sides agreed something was missed, and that led to this debris issue that we're currently experiencing. But again, we think that we've worked through this issue now, even though it took several weeks to get to this point. The technicians on board are feeling much more positive today than they did last week even. So again, hopefully next week, July 10th, is going to be the start of the air ginger service, and any customers who are anticipating or wondering what is going to happen with the port trials over the next several days, we'll get a clearer picture over the weekend if we run into any additional problems.
I appreciate the time, Darryl. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Addy.
Take care. Bye-bye. Darryl Mercer is Communication Director with Marine Atlantic. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're running the rock, or at least Alyssa Shaw is. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's see here. Let's go to line number 1. Good morning, Alyssa Shaw. You are on the air.
Good morning.
Welcome to the show.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Thank you so much for having me.
No
I'm
problem.
good, thank you.
No problem at all. So who are you and what's your relationship with the Run the Rock?
So my name is Alyssa Shaw. I am the Development Manager for Make-A-Wish Canada's Newfoundland and Labrador chapter, and I spearhead the Run the Rock from the office's perspective.
So I know what the Run the Rock event is, and of course it begins today. They run across the island until the 17th. There's a big contingent of Royal Canadian Navy sailors from the HMSC St. John. So tell us a bit more about why the run and who's running.
Perfect. So we have 16 sailors from HMCS St. John's. They do a relay-style run across the province, starting here in Port-aux-Basque. They do 900 kilometers, just a little over, until we make it to St. John's on the 17th. So I have 16 sailors with me. We're doing a full fundraising day today in Port-aux-Basque, and the running part actually kicks off tomorrow.
How does the fundraising work? Are you simply asking for people to be aware of the run and make a donation out of the goodness of their heart, or is there a formal program in place to raise money?
Yeah, there's a bit of a formal program. So what we'll do today, where we have a full fundraising day in Port-aux-Basque, we'll also have fundraisers on the ground in Port-aux-Basque tomorrow, but our destination is Stephenville tomorrow for the schedule. So we'll have one running van, one fundraiser in Port-aux-Basque, and then the rest will head to Stephenville. So we're at various locations each day of the run, so you can stay tuned to our Facebook page and stuff for that. Today we're at North Atlantic, Coleman's, Tim Hortons, that sort of thing. Anybody that will have us, really. So it's a coin drive.
Not that it really matters about where they're from, these 16 sailors, but are there any Newfoundlanders by chance?
There is. I think I have 4 Newfoundlanders this year that are looking forward to chatting with you along our route. I do have one person, Michael Toms from Boyd's Cove. This is his 6th run. So, he's gearing to go. I have other connections and things on the crew. So we'll definitely keep you posted. Everybody wants to chat with you for sure. But we'll definitely hear some more Newfoundland stories and things like that along the way.
What kind of distance are they running in this relay individually before they pass the baton, so to speak?
Yes. Yeah, so it's more so like a fitness challenge for them, however many kilometers they can do. Some will do 10, some will do 30. But the kilometer stretches that we do, it's anywhere between 85 kilometers to 105 kilometers each day. So they do it relay style, and they'll split themselves up just to make sure that everybody's getting their kilometers in and everybody's, challenging themselves for the Make-A-Wish Foundation and for the Wish Kids across the province.
I have a soft spot in my heart for Make-A-Wish. I did an awful lot of events there years ago with the organization, and over the past 20, I guess this is the 29th annual, how much money has been raised in the first 28? Do you know?
It's been $1.7 million, so that's the equivalent of close to 170 wishes. The average cost of a wish is $10,000. And last year, they beat the record. For the past 28 years, as of last year, they raised $132,000 for the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and this year the crew is gearing to go to beat that record, actually. So we're looking for all the support from Newfoundlanders across the province. All proceeds stay here to help our Wish Kids here on the ground.
Does this happen in other provinces as well?
It does. Run the Rock was actually the first one that had started for Atlantic Canada, but each Atlantic Canadian province has their own, but it's known as Run for Wishes. Run the Rock was the first one that had happened, and it kind of just sprang from there. So we're so grateful for HMCS St. John's, but also the Royal Canadian Navy's support in making wishes come true.
I think it's great, and congratulations to everyone who organised it and the 16 runners themselves. We're looking forward to updates, and if people want to make a donation from the comfort of their own home today, maybe even get out and see some of the runners, what do they have to do?
Perfect. Yeah, so you can stay tuned to Make-A-Wish Canada Newfoundland and Labrador chapter's Facebook page to see where the crew is. But to make a donation or to see a full schedule of their stops along the way and the dates, our website is makeawish.ca/runtherock.
Appreciate you making time for the show, Alyssa. Good luck.
Thank you, Patty, so much for having me.
My pleasure. Take care. Stay in touch.
You too. Bye-bye.
There we go. It's Alyssa Shaw with the Make-A-Wish Foundation. She's the fund manager. Let's get back to breaks on time. When we come back, we're talking screen time. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go. Line number 2. Charlie, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Good morning to you.
While I was waiting there, I was thinking back over all the hosts. This is going to date me as far as age. All the hosts I've been talking to. And I believe I got up to number 8, counting one of your part-timers. So I want to reach 10, so I'm hoping you're going to have to retire soon because I haven't got many years left, okay?
Okay, you know what? I've had enough. This is my last call.
I should come on sometime and rate all you guys and gals, right? But anyway, you'd rank right up there, very well informed.
I appreciate it, Charlie. Thanks for the call this morning.
Patty, just a couple of quickies there. Your comments on the use of iPhones and so on, I thought were excellent. This is a bigger problem than it's being identified as. And just a little anecdote. I had a teen relative here a few years back, and they were into their phone the whole time here. And I half jokingly and half to make a message, I hid the thing, right? Well, you should have seen the reaction. I can tell you it didn't go over well at all. And I realized then how important they think that is to them, you know. And I want to go quickly to the debate in the U.S. before I get to the main topic.
Just one thing on screen time. You know, it all stands to reason. It makes a lot of sense because when we capitulate, and look, parenting is hard and it can be extremely emotionally taxing, and trying to get a second of peace and quiet can be very difficult to say the least. But we really are just coming through the first generation-ish to be using these smartphones. It's one thing to be given, some old doodad for a child to play with, or plopping them in front of the TV and sticking on the VCR with Toy Story. But these smartphones are just a different beast. And so it's nothing surprising comes from the report, and I don't think anyone is going to be shocked by it. But it's important to note that this is real scientific research. We're not just, anecdotally saying, well, your child is crooked because you took away the smartphone. These are actual researchers that did a pretty deep dive, and the report is pretty comprehensive. So, and again, we did it too. And it might have only been with the TV for a bit, or flick on some music and try to have a dance, or go out and play a bit of street hockey. But when you're looking for a break, the smartphone's an easy one because virtually every single child will be fascinated by it.
Well, the stats since 2012 certainly tell a lot on this story. On the U.S. debate, very quickly, to your U.S. audiences there, I'm sure some listen in. Would you rather be governed by maybe an older man who's losing some of his verbal acuity? He's going to have advisors on his big decisions, and that he will have advisors, experts to help him through these things. And he's got a great VP in my estimation. Whereas you're looking at the other guy who's not quite as old and more energy, but he's surrounded by yes men. So whatever crazy thing he comes up with, like shooting people who want to cross the border and so on, they're going to say yes to him. And this is going to make for a very, very strange 4 years if he gets back in. So consider the options there when you vote. Anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Fair enough. And, just one comment, because I really dislike talking American politics, is the focus on age. And yes, Mr. Biden is getting old, and he's not as sharp as he once was. It's undeniable, and I totally get it. But the keen focus on age is also interesting, given the fact that if Trump is successful, he will indeed become the oldest serving president of all time. So the age conversation is just sort of a strange place. And very last comment, I promise, is what I find to be pretty gross, is that we're using dementia as a political slur. I mean, just think of the number of people in this country alone that are dealing with dementia personally, and their families who are trying to care for their loved someone with dementia. So it's a real issue, but now it's a political slur, which is just kind of grotesque in my own personal opinion. There's lots of ways to be argumentative and to criticize and or condemn, but using an actual diagnosed condition just to win political points is scraping the bottom of the barrel.
Coming from the guy who mocked disabled people on national TV, you can expect more of this kind of terrible stuff. Anyway, I want to talk about a little bit about white privilege and immigration and so on. Paddy, the Western Hemisphere for several hundred years has been dominated by white society, as you know. We sailed from our nations to countries in Africa and Central and South America and so on, and Southeast Asia. And we basically took what we needed from these countries. Not only that, we had the labor, cheap labor or slave labor, and we enriched our own nations with this resource from people and minerals and so on, fish and you name it. They didn't tell us any of this in schools, by the way. They talked about bunga and a lot of other things, but they never told us what colonialism and that was all about. And that was one of the reasons I criticize schools today. We don't get into really telling the gory end of things. Anyway, as far as immigration, these countries have a colonial past, and it impinges on some of their troubles today, both in governance and as far as what they have left in resources to deal with. The best way to answer immigration, of course, is to help these countries. We took from them for hundreds of years, and now we don't want to help them recover, not only recover from what we did, but from what we're doing to them as I speak with our climate thing, our gases and so on from the industrial society. So if we want to cut down immigration, we've got to look at more foreign aid. We've certainly got to look at African countries, Central American countries. The United States raped these countries for years with their large companies in Central America. They interfered with governance and so on, and now they're reaping the whirlwind that they sowed, because these people are coming in as economic refugees, not as terrorists, as a lot of people would like us to believe. So anyway, if you look at all these things and look at white privilege, it's very real indeed. And anybody who turns up the nose and say, well, I haven't got much privilege and so on, you've got to look at the overall thing, the overall history of the white race in terms of these minorities and where we are today.
Well, okay, I do have to take another call, but the way the history books are written is really quite clear. The history is written by the victor. That's just how it works, right? So regardless of what side you're on, regardless of what issue we're talking about, what war we're talking about, colonization or anything else under the sun, history books are written by the winners, by the victors. That's why we learn what we learn. That's why we read what we read. And I think that can be used as a pretty pointed example across the board. And again, it doesn't really matter what we're talking about. If there was a so-called battle for anything, whether it be equal rights or land or oil or whatever, the history books are written by those who won. Period.
Exactly, and that's what we were brought up on, and we don't have a good knowledge unless we read and get into things ourselves. We're left with a schooling that's left us with half of what we should know, and I maintain that that's happening with a lot of stuff in our curriculum today. But anyway, thank you, Patty, for the comments.
Appreciate the time.
Okay.
Thanks, Charlie. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Let's keep rolling here. Let's go to line number 3. Terry, you're on the air.
How are you doing, Patty?
Doing okay. How about you?
I can't complain, I suppose. I've been trying for a couple of years there to get some trees from around the wires. So I pay for a street light there that shines in, on the property and that, right? And I've been having hard luck getting them to come and do it. Trying
to get Newfoundland Power to do it?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they do it quite the way they used to in the past, because it used to be pretty fundamental, right? You call Newfoundland Power, said you got some problematic branches around the wires, they'd come and take care of it. And sometimes they'd even just parole the neighbourhood without even having been a request put in. So I don't know what has changed, to be honest.
No, well, I've had them there before. Like, there've been a crew from down Jackson's Arm somewhere like that came and pruned them. But they were supposed to come. I called them twice now in the last 2 years, and they haven't showed up. I know in the past there I've heard you helping people that worked on.
I do know someone in the business. Are you willing to pay, or are you hoping that Newfoundland Power can come and do it for free?
Well, I was hoping for Newfoundland Power to come, right?
Let me I do have a contact at Newfoundland Power. What I'll do to begin with is I'll send him an email and give us some update as to exactly what the process is these days, because it does feel like it's changed. To exactly what, I'm not sure. But you stay tuned to the show, Terry, and or send me an email that I can respond to, and I'll get the information as soon as possible.
Yeah, I already sent you an email, Patty, but I can send you another one, I suppose.
Oh, when did you send that?
3 or 4 days ago.
Okay, can you resend it for me, please? Because I've got a ton of emails that I try to sift through.
Yes, I was figuring you'd have them up from over the weekend, yeah.
Yeah, well, I had a 4-day break. I came back to 100, so I'll try to find yours, but if you can resend it, that'd be helpful.
No, I'll resend it.
Okay.
Got a minute for darts?
Absolutely.
Okay, did you watch any darts?
I do, yeah, sometimes. When they took it off by...
They were on last weekend, right?
Okay.
Newfoundland did excellent.
Tell us about it.
Lots of gold medals. Now, I haven't had a chance to see any of the matches yet because I don't know how to pick them up. But I know there was 2 ladies there from St. John's won gold. I think one of the ladies' names was Squires.
Okay.
And there was 2 fellas from Island Cove, Mercer, no, they're not brothers. Darren and his son, nephew Brian, they won gold also. But Newfoundland done really well, but not so good in the Open. I never seen a match from Newfoundland in the Canadian Open. It was all Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Alberta. The big guns in that.
Well, I guarantee you there's someone listening to the program this morning that has all those Newfoundland Labrador results at the tip of their fingers. So if they send them to me with the names and the results, I'm happy to give them a shout out. No problem at all.
It'd be great. I'd love to hear it myself because there's been a lot of new names since I've been playing them darts. Let me tell you, there's a lot of good dart players here in Newfoundland for sure.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it. We got a couple of guys that have been pretty successful as professionals. And women.
Guaranteed.
There's a lady who was just put into the Hall of Fame not that long ago. Her name is right on the tip of my tongue. I can't find it, but someone listening provided me the titanium warfare information, and we'll talk about it on the show.
Was that Amy Earle was inducted?
Amy
or
Earle.
Cavell Taylor?
There you go. I think that's exactly right.
I think Cavell Taylor was too.
Okay.
Yeah, from Greens Harbor. She's from. Yeah, it's good stuff. Good darts. All right, Patty.
I appreciate the time.
I'll be waiting for the email. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem at all. All the best.
Have a good one.
Okay, you too,
Bye.
Terry. Bye-bye. So my one contact at Newfoundland Power listens to the show fairly frequently, I think. So if you are listening, and I'll leave your name out of it, if you are listening, can you give me an idea of exactly what the tree pruning program looks like at Newfoundland Power these days? That'll be most helpful. Let's take a break. When we come back, Justin's there to talk wait times. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go. Line number 4. Justin, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you?
I'm doing okay. How about you?
Not too good. I'm sad this morning. I'm upset. I'm frustrated with the Eastern Health. My wife, she's been diagnosed with cancer in March, and she's got through 5 treatments of chemo. And since that time, she's taken on a depression, and we reached out for help. So I ended up taking her to the Health Science Center at the psychiatric unit to get help. It will be 3 weeks this Wednesday. Still, nothing has been done. I was told when I brought her there that we were going to give her a few days to assess and see what things, how things pan out, which was fine. Wednesday was 2 Wednesdays ago was her first time to get, or last Wednesday, sorry, was her first time to get ECT treatment, is what they recommended. And we weren't. I was told that she couldn't get it then because it was a long weekend coming up. We'll wait till Monday or Wednesday the next week. So I've been waiting. And just this past Wednesday, I was told it was cancelled again because her CT scan never got done in time, and she missed the window for ECT. So Wednesday, I was told again it would happen this morning. This morning, I was called by the doctor, and I was told it missed the window again because of a clerical error in the paperwork. So I'm here in limbo, trying to reach out to Eastern Health, to government offices. I've been going around in circles. I've been speaking to several people, and there seems to be no urgency in this matter at all because right now her chemo treatments are on hold. And I don't know where to turn. I'm just lost, and I'm so disappointed in the system, as if nobody cares. I don't know.
The hiccups in the system, and you talk about the fact you're frustrating. I mean, it's very worrying as well. So people are waiting, whether it be for an MRI or a CAT scan or whatever it is, it comes with huge implications. So exactly how long have you been waiting, though? I want to make sure I got that.
This Wednesday will be 3 weeks, and there's no medication change. There is no ECT treatment carried out as of yet. Nothing has changed. And I told them, I said, I brought her in here for help. I didn't bring her in here for you guys to monitor her. That's not what I brought her for. So right now, like I said, everything is, and she's gone now. She slipped into the catatonic state. So basically, she's just there staring. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this state. I wasn't until I learned this a couple of days ago. But right now, she's just there, just waiting for an ECT, and hopefully this is going to bring her out so we can get her back on schedule so she can carry on with her chemo. As a simple chemo or breast cancer, the diagnosis that she has is, I guess it's not the most serious type of cancer, but still, then again, we're waiting now. This will be 3 weeks this coming Wednesday, and to me, it's not good enough. And it's just so stressful having to deal with all of this stuff.
I can only imagine. And I am unfortunately familiar with what a catatonic state looks like. Okay. And it's very unsettling to say the very least. So do you have any earthly idea about when things are going to change, when things are going to happen, when the scan will be conducted?
Well, right now she did have her CT scan Wednesday. Everything was, like I said, was on par to happen today, but clerical error again got shagged up. So right now they're telling me it's going to happen Monday. But the longer I wait and the longer it takes for this to happen and for her to come out of the state, all of her cancer treatments are on pause. So I don't know if there's a way. Like I said, I've been reaching out to the government offices. I don't know if there's a way that maybe she can have her ECT tomorrow. There's got to be options. There's got to be a better system than this. And not only that, I was in there last week over the long weekend, and I noticed her feet swelling and her belly was swelling. And I'm thinking, something's not right. So I went to the nurse on staff there, and I asked her, I said, I've noticed this in the last couple of days. I said, is there a way, maybe somebody could check her? And she said, well, I can call somebody in, but I don't call nobody in because it's not an emergency. I said, well, I don't want it to be an emergency. I'd like for somebody to see, what's happening because things have changed in the last couple of days. Anyway, she did call in a psychiatrist at the time, and he did his best, and he did come back in the second time, and he did, give me a bit of comfort knowing that he did something and tried. But Monday morning when the nurse practitioner came on, she looked at my wife, and she said, oh, my God. She had to put a catheter in, and she drained off 2.5 bags of urine. So it was almost at the point where it could have been, an ending. But again, just because it's the weekend or a long weekend, it seems like things pause. And in my case right now, time is not on my side. I'm running out of time. And 3 weeks for me is a bit too long. And not only for me suffering, but for her as well. And I'm thinking that, there's got to be some solution to what I've got going on.
There has to be, and what it is, I honest to God don't know. We try on a variety of fronts to try to dig in and try to help where we can. When it comes to things regarding healthcare and wait times, of course, we run up against it all the time because the easy pushback is, well, there's privacy matters and concerns, so we can't talk about specific cases and all those things because I run into that every time that I make an inquiry on anybody's behalf about these types of issues. So I wish I could do something or say something that could make things easier today, but unfortunately I don't think we can. But I wish you and your family well. Anything else you'd like to offer this morning?
No, but I'm just hoping that somebody out there is listening, and I hope another family doesn't have to go through what I've been going through in the last 2.5, 3 weeks.
I hope the best for you, and I hope that your comment is heard by the health services. Take good care, and I wish you good luck, Justin.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah.
You're welcome. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, boy. I mean, you know, I've heard from people all the time. Oh, here's a question that was posed via email, and I'm not 100% sure. And, Michael, you're bound to send me another dim-witted email about this stuff, but MRI wait times. If people choose to go out of province to get one, and, you know, say, for instance, you go to the United States and you're elsewhere in Canada, will that be accepted in full by local doctors as a verified report? I don't know the answer to that, but that's an interesting question. I would imagine the answer is yes, absolutely. If you go to a certified MRI clinic, there's no good reason why a doctor would reject the findings back here in your home province. So anyway, let's keep rolling before we get to the news. Let's go to line number 3. Harold, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Good morning to you.
I bought a refrigerator from a furniture company in Gander last June or July, I think. They delivered it on the 5th of July. And I got this thing to warranty, and I keep phoning them. The fridge gave out. And I've been here 3 weeks trying to get someone to come and fix the fridge. And they're telling me it's too far away. I mean, Trinity, Bonavista Bay, near Centerville. Loop Road, and they're telling me the repair guy is in Lewisport, and it's too far to come to fix the fridge, and he won't give me a new fridge from a guy from Gander. I don't know what to do with it. I'm frustrated with it.
Well, I mean, for starters, terrible customer service, and they didn't tell you that when they sold you the fridge, that the warranty's only good enough if you live close to the repair guy, so that's nonsense to begin with. There are a couple of places that you can file former business complaints in the province. First place that I send people, and they do have some success sometimes, is with Service Newfoundland, or Service NL. So that's Sarah Stully's department. If you go to Service NL online, there's a place there for consumer affairs where you can file a complaint, and they do follow up, and some people have actually reported back to me that they had some success with that filing, so I would do that number 1.
Yeah, frustrating. I need a refrigerator this time of year. I have probably down here, so I
can't hear you very clearly, Harold. Yeah, the connection's poor. The connection's poor, so we're having a hard time hearing you clearly.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this phone is about. Yeah. Okay. I'll call these people. What you said.
Yep.
It's what? Newfoundland?
It's Service NL. I might be able to get your phone number here quick enough. It's Consumer Affairs is at that department. So, let's see. This should be quick. Stop. And here we go. Consumer Protection. There we go. Consumer Affairs. Bang. There we go. And see if there's a specific number for them. All right. Here we go. Service NL is 709.
709, yeah.
729.
729.
4834.
4834.
That's it.
Thank you.
So no problem at all. You call them and ask for Consumer Affairs, and that's the people that you need to speak with.
Okay. Have a good day.
You too, Harold. Good luck with it.
Yeah. Bye.
Okay. Bye. You know, it really is remarkable. I'm not going to say where this particular appliance is, but, you know, there's people out there, they've got, for instance, a deep freeze, and it's 30 years old, and it runs like a top. And then you talk about the appliances that we buy today, and they're kind of disposable. You know, just think about it. You buy a stove or a range, you bring it home, and all of a sudden the clock goes on it, which compromises other operations of the stove. It's more expensive to fix the clock than it is to buy a new range. No wonder we're all being bamboozled by some of this stuff. It's just not built the way it once was. And absolutely, they are disposable. You shouldn't be able to think about an appliance as being a disposable product, but it really feels that's the way. The ice maker goes in your side-by-side fridge. It's cheaper to buy a new friggin' fridge than it is to fix the ice machine. It's something else. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, plenty of show for you. Let's check in with David. How are we doing on the telephone, Dave? All right, we got some folks in the queue to talk about what? We'll find out. Don't go away.
Your voice in Newfoundland and Labrador's biggest conversation.
If you want to know what's happening in your province, tune in to Openline every day.
Have your say weekday morning starting at 9 a.m. on Openline with Paddy Daly on your VOCM.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number one. Say good morning to the president at the FFAW. That's Greg Purdy. Greg, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you?
Doing okay. How about you?
Well, not too bad given the circumstances. I wanted to call this morning to talk about Seamus O'Regan's call yesterday. I mean, it's an incredible piece of theatre, but there are some points there I think that you raised later after the call with respect to the threshold. If there was in fact a threshold which would trigger NAFO and other Canadian groundfish companies. So
sure. I wasn't speaking with Minister O'Regan all the same. I don't know. He maybe spoke with the newsroom around the morning show. I just made those comments of my own accord based on what I heard him say.
Oh yes, yeah. It was a news report. You're right. But you raised the issue of threshold. So I just wanted to say that there's no threshold. This is a stewardship fishery. It's the only one in Canada. It's very unique given the importance to the province. So there's no threshold of 18, 15, 20, 30, 50,000 tons that would trigger NAFO coming in. They don't exist. This was a political decision by the government of Canada to put the boots to Newfoundland's industry. We have harvesters, you know the deal, waiting for this to come back, waiting for quotas. We have processors who invested in cod lines, you know, to restart, to get this fishery up and going, get the markets up and going. And all we got was a kick in the guts from the MPs. And it's not good enough. I mean, how callous have you got to be to say you can't have your cake and eat it too? But you know who does have their cake and they're eating it too? The offshore companies. They're getting a double crack on these issues. So, you know, we're still calling for, we're not letting it go. We're calling for a stewardship fishery to do this thing right and grow it properly. I mean, the insensitivity from these. I mean, here's the Minister of Labour, Paddy, for Canada, who's actually removing labor jobs from Newfoundland. I mean, it's that crazy. But they're doubling down on us. So it's extremely important that we get this thing right. We can't have a repeat. So we're still saying to the PMO's office in particular, that this rescind this decision, go back to a stewardship fishery. It's that important. It's been important for 30 years, and what they've done here is an absolute slap in the face to our members, our industry, our communities, and our province.
Did you happen to hear Carrie Bunnell on the show earlier, Greg?
Sorry?
Did you happen to hear Carrie Bunnell from Ocean Choice on the show earlier this morning?
No, I did not.
What's interesting, and I'm not speaking for Mr. Bunnell, but to paraphrase, there's a thought that the FFAW or others are attacking folks who actually work in the offshore industry versus the political decision-making process, because I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that you're begrudging someone who you probably even represent working on an offshore boat, because it's a job. That's what they do for a living. They make a paycheck to feed their families. The issue for me, and you correct me if I'm wrong, is all about the political issues regarding the decision-making and the questionable threshold comments that have been made, and cake and eat it too. So is that an accurate reflection where the union is? Because I don't think I've heard you attack the workers.
No, of course not. We represent a fair number of OCI vessels, for example. So I know what's going on in the offshore. They haven't fished it for 30 years. Some of these non-unionized boats are struggling. Those offshore companies don't pay them enough to go to sea. The unionized vessels are doing moderately better. But we're not attacking the workers as such. I mean, they're out there. They have quotas. They're still fishing for the most part. But the issue of political interference here, the 18,000 tons, as you know, and I think it kind of gets lost in the general public, that's a pretty paltry sum. We're still struggling as an industry. We struggled on 13. We'd struggled on 18. We asked for 25, but we need small steps to grow this fishery properly. And it hasn't happened, and it's extremely disappointing. that they would, constantly, they packed up the redfish decision. The same MPs did nothing for us on EI last year when people were shanghaied by the EI system. They did nothing on reds. They were warned not to do this on cod for all the right reasons, and they did it anyway. And so now we're left with you can't have your cake and eat it too. Well, that's misrepresenting the industry. It's misrepresenting these communities and our workers, and it's important enough to do it properly. So we're going to keep on asking to get this thing right. It's much too important for this industry. And by the way, I'll tell you this one, you probably already know, but for the benefit of some of your listeners, the Canadian government packed this up in the first place. They allowed, as you know very well, the largest cod stock in the world on an extensive offshore fishery. They allowed them to go out on the spawning grounds and post-spawning concentrations of cod. Imagine, they allowed that. And so we are still living that legacy of mismanagement. And for Seamus to say, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Well, that's just not good enough because you don't understand the history, you don't understand what you're doing, and you've made decisions here that actually will take money off people's tables in this province. That's how important it is, and that's how insidious these MPs have treated us. I don't mind. There's a centralist government, Paddy. They got a history of making poor decisions. But when we send people to Ottawa to represent us, we expect them to stand up for us and not stand up for Carrie Bonnell's crowd, which is what they've done on reds and what they've done on cod. And it's absolutely ridiculous. Geez, you'd swear they're up in the polls or something, the atrocious behavior that we're getting from that crowd, sorry.
Let me bounce this off you. So I know what you're asking for, a reversal of this decision. How do you think that's going to be reacted by? Because just think about this for a second. If they've made this decision and the implications it has with the offshore fleets and the implications it has with NAFO, if they try to stick that genie back in the bottle, then all of a sudden that's completely operating in bad faith as well. So they've already got themselves a credibility concern, and that would be a cell phone. That would be political harry-carry. What do you think?
Well, it depends on your definition of political harry-carry. I mean, some say they committed that on redfish. But here's the issue. And I go back to O'Regan yesterday. He says that, we have NAFO treaties. He made some reference to NAFO treaties been there for a long, before him. Well, that's okay, I mean, he's respecting the NAFO decisions, but the promise on 115 doesn't mean a thing to him or his fisheries minister or his government. What about the promise to those communities? What about the promise for those plants? We had 48 plants licensed to process cod in Newfoundland last year. I think we had 17 or 18 processors. There's room here for growth. That's what we expected. That's why we did that stewardship fishery. So that's important. That's important moving forward, that these promises that are made by successive governments are honoured. I'm not sure if that answers your question or not. But,
kind of. So, even the whole 115,000 ton issue, I mean, that's as old as 1979. So that's not anything new. That was reiterated in 82, 83, 2015, added a number or more dates if you see fit. But that one came across to me as really extraordinarily flimsy without looking down the road and considering as to whether or not we're ever going to get back to a 115,000 ton quota, period. Because here we are going back and forth over 18,000 ton. So that one reeked of just rubber stamping something that people probably thought was never going to happen in the first place.
Not sure if I agree with you on that one, and here's why. Politicians are, to get elected, I mean, they'll cite scripture in many cases to get elected. But once they get elected, of course, they have to kowtow to whatever political influences they adhere to. But the important part in this one, and I know it's a 30-year promise on 115, was made by some people who were extremely gifted, who were extremely knowledgeable, who were thoughtful people, and I just had to refer to Romeo LeBlanc on this one. That was really the baseline here. So it's one thing for politicians to say it and have it repeated time after time. But in this case, Patrick, it was actually built in to the DFO management plan. And that gives it a whole lot more credibility than somebody on the hustings saying, "Oh, vote for me and we'll give you 115." That's not the history of it, by the way, because successive governments have committed to that, and there's a recognition. There's a recognition in this province from the provincial Department of Fisheries. There was and the people who work for those, the deputy ministers, that was all there. Even Sylvia, who's got a long-term career with DFO, knew about 115, but just passes it off as, it's just an issue. We don't have to worry about that because we're talking about surpluses and bad quality fish. I mean, what garbage coming out. We either had it or we didn't. It was either honored or it wasn't, and it hasn't been. So it has to be fixed.
Fair enough. So what's next steps? You talked about there'll be hell raised or whatever the right word is or right phrase is for protests or what have you. So what's next? What's coming?
What's coming? We got our staffs engaged on the campaign. We have a couple of irons in the fire, and as I said, we will be demonstrating. If we can't get this fixed in short order, you'll see massive demonstrations in this province.
I'm not going to be surprised because it almost looks like you got what you were asking for when we talked about free enterprise and those types of things, though, even though not fully. But I'm not going to be surprised if there are some protests, whether that be in front of federal government offices or whatever the case may be. And what do you make of the fact that the Premier is now speaking out on your behalf or on the decision's behalf? Because, people will say it's political timing. He's trying to distance himself from the government, whether it be carbon tax equalisation or Northern Cod. But do you find that you have an ally on this front, or do you think it's simply more politics and optics than it is actual policy?
Well, I got to go back to last year. On the crab, following that crab tie-up, we shone a light on that fishery. I think that hasn't been shown in a long time, and as a result of that, I think I know the province got engaged, and as a result of that, we had a loan board. Now that we didn't have before, there's a promise here to look at corporate concentration from the province. And getting on this issue is so important. It's not just political, in my opinion. It goes to every community. The wealth of this province is on what we can take out of that water and what we can sustain. And that's important to the province. And so I really respect the Premier's involvement in this. It's the right thing to do, and hopefully we can move this issue forward together. Appreciate the time, Greg. Thanks for the call. And thank you, Paddy. Cheers. Bye. Bye.
Greg Priddy, President of the FFAW. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Amanda, you're on the air.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
No problem.
I wanted to come on and talk about a barbecue fundraiser that's happening tomorrow down at Kent in Mount Pearl from 10 to 4, and we are supporting the NLBT Boys U14 Elite Travel Team. They are going to Montreal July the 26th to compete on the mainland, and we are super excited to try and get them there as easily as we can. So I'm asking anyone in the area to pop out and support us.
So I'm guessing that acronym means basketball?
Yes,
okay.
Basketball. Sorry about that.
I just wanted to make sure I was on the right page. I mean, it's extraordinarily expensive to travel as a sports team. Even just getting involved these days is way out of reach for so many families. So, as someone who's been involved with sports as a player and as a parent, I'm familiar with the fundraising efforts. What's the approximate price tag you're looking at to bring the team?
Well, per child, it's a little over $2,000 to travel, and that's not including meals or spending money, that kind of thing. But it does include all their training, which shout out to Angela, the coordinator. She has been amazing coordinating and guiding these kids through this.
And what exactly is going on in Montreal? What's the tournament?
Oh, my goodness. The tournament itself, I'm not sure of the name. I'm actually going to bring my son on the line. Leland? You are on the air. Do you have any more details about the tournament itself in Montreal?
I don't know anything about it.
That's how well informed we are.
Well, that's
Apologize
okay.
about
Look, all we're trying to do is raise a few bucks. We'll find out what's going on in Montreal when we get to Montreal. Leland, how old are you?
I'm 14.
14. What position do you play?
I play point guard.
Point guard. How tall are you?
I'm 5'3".
5'3". So what's the best part of your game? Where are you at your best?
I'm hoping to be a good three-point shooter.
Well, that's the way the ball is now, right? Because when we were young, it was all about the big guys bumping uglies. Everyone had to have a big 7-foot center to be successful. Now it's all about the three ball.
Well, the game's evolving. That's how it works.
Yeah, exactly right. You know, there's still lots of big players, but the three-point shot really does rule. So do you have a good one now?
Kinda. Uh-oh.
Are you left-handed or right-handed?
I'm right-handed.
Do you guys run a lot of plays specifically trying to get the three?
No, we try to get easier shots, not force anything like the three.
Yeah, because it's nice to put a three up on the board, but it comes with obviously some risk about, you know, how long you have the ball in your hand, and of course how long the other team has the ball in their hand. Tell us about your team. You got a good squad?
We have a pretty good squad. We have mostly big people, not that many small people, so it's harder for us to get better.
Because one thing you'll find, like we all find when we travel to the mainland, they've just got so many people to pick from, is that inevitably they'll have some guys that are going to be so big you've never seen players like that. Well, very few.
Well, my coach says that they're going to be much bigger and they're going to have way more experience than us, so...
Yeah, so how are you going to handle that? Because sometimes when we go up and we're automatically intimidated, we probably don't put our best effort forward. So how are you going to manage that, you know, the anticipation of big and strong and whatever they might bring?
We're going to try to work as hard as we can and get to a higher point so we can compete.
Yeah, just try to limit the turnovers, right? Well, I wish you good luck. When do you leave?
I will leave July 26th.
July 26th. It should be a real blast. Have you ever been to Montreal?
I've never even left the island.
Really? Well, you're going to love it. Montreal is a fantastic city.
I hear that a lot, yeah.
Yeah, try to make time in between training and games. Get down to see old Montreal. You'll be glad you did.
Welcome, so.
Thanks for your time this morning, Leland. Good luck and safe travels. Put your mom back on so we get the details of the fundraiser one more time.
Hi, I'm here.
Okay, there we go. So where are the wins one more time?
Okay, so it's at Kent out in Mount Pearl on Old Placentia Road from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. We're going to have hot dogs, drinks, chips, candy, and one of the parents actually made homemade Jolly Rancher lollipops, which are delicious.
Sound delicious. Are you going to Montreal as well with the team?
No, I am not. I'm going to let this bird fly free, but we do have family out there, so I've got a backup if needed.
Oh, terrific. Appreciate the time. Good luck with the fundraising.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome, Amanda. Take care.
Take care. Thanks.
There we go. You're welcome. Bye-bye. All right, that's pretty great. Let's go to line number 3. Lee, you're on the air.
Oh, hi. Good morning from Labrador City.
Welcome to the show.
Calling in to talk about Riffs Quest, my journey to see all the Riff stores in Newfoundland and Labrador.
That's right. I forgot. So it's Lee Stewart we have on the line. Okay, welcome to the show, Lee. So you've already given...
we had it last year.
Yeah,
yes.
you're at it. I think there's like 18 Riffs, if I'm not mistaken. How many have you already hit?
Yeah, well, there's 20... across the entire province.
Okay.
So 18 on the island, 2 in Labrador. So when we spoke last year, I had visited all 18 on the island. So this summer, a couple of days ago, I actually finished the last one in Goose Bay, Labrador.
So it's a monumental achievement. What do you get from it, Lee? Or is it just something you wanted to do for a lark?
Bragging rights, really.
There you go.
It's like nobody else ever thought of doing something like this. and it got a lot of buzz on social media.
Yeah.
So I figured, well, I was the one that started it, so I had to be the one to finish it.
And now you've got to finish.
And I did.
Were there any types of celebrations in store when you made your way to the final one?
Well, there's a brewery in Paradise that actually makes a 33 1/3 ale based upon riffs. So I bought a couple of those, and after I finished the riffs quest, I had a riffs beer to celebrate.
Hold on, let me pull it together here. Are all riffs created equal, or are there really big ones that have a lot of different amenities? Or tell us about the differences.
Well, yeah, as we discussed last year. So, in my opinion, the holy grail of riffs stores is in St. Albans. What makes it different than any other store is its layout. Well, not its layout, but its design or form, I guess. Because part of it exists in a regular store, but then there's a dome attached to the side of it that's connected. So once you go into the store, you walk down over a set of stairs and you're in some sort of dome. And so that was kind of interesting.
Had you ever been to Labrador prior to your riffs quest?
No. Now, Labrador has always been on my bucket list of places to explore, but riffs gave me the motivation to actually come up here. I have to tell anybody that thinks about trying this riffs quest, it's going to require a lot of time, a lot of money, especially in Labrador, because it's a lot of driving between Fort Tow, about 9 hours of driving between Fort Tow and Goose Bay.
Oh, I mean, Labrador is immense. You could fit the entirety of the United Kingdom in Labrador and have lots of land left over.
True. I just want to share a few. Sorry to cut you off there. I just want to share a few anecdotes from the road, and then I'll clue it up. So one of the craziest adventures we had is driving in a thunderstorm, or going up the Beta Spear Highway, driving back from Harbour Breton. So that was one interesting experience. Another one is Helen, my travel companion. She had to sweet talk the manager of the Port aux Basques Mall into opening the store so I could get a picture in front of the riffs down there. I had a flat tire in Fogo, and what makes that challenging is that there's only one mechanic on the island. Luckily, he was on the island at the time. I was able to get my tire repaired. And the last anecdote I just want to share with your listeners is in Fort Tow. So as I was posing outside the Fort Tow location, this guy rides up on a tractor, on a lawnmower, and he tells me that he used to own the Rift store and that he sold it. So we had a grand chat about that.
I think it's brilliant. This entire adventure is just remarkable. So has Riffs done anything for you? Because this is some good PR for them as well. So do you get a discount or anything?
Yes. Remember, I don't know if you recall last year. So they had given me a $500 gift card and some swag.
Pretty great.
So I actually spent most of it in the Clarenville store, but I saved some money left over, or I had some money left over for my Labrador adventure. So I spent some of it at the Goose Bay location, and I'm going to spend the remainder of it when I head back at the Fort Tow location.
Yeah, fair enough. What's the final price tag on the entire 20 visits to the riffs around the province?
Well, you can't put a price on it. It's the memories will last a lifetime, but the financial cost is pretty steep.
Well, Lee, good on you, and I'm sure it was a real blast, and no doubt Riffs get something out of it here as well. I've actually got someone who just sent me a text, and they're writing a book, and there's going to be some parts of it about Riffs. They want me to connect the two. Let's see here. I'll say this to our listener live on air. Do you want me to give out your email live on air? The fellow who's texting me? Give us yes or no.
Oh, sure. Yeah, you can go ahead.
Hold on. I'm going to put you on hold, and I'm going to give something to David, and he'll pass it on to you. Okay? Lee, congratulations on just a monumental achievement.
Okay. I just want to finish. Want to finish up with this. Riff's Quest has been the greatest adventure of my life. I want to thank Helen Mackey for coming along on the ride.
Yeah, say hello to Helen for me. It wasn't that long ago I actually phoned her father to wish him happy birthday up the shore.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
awesome. Okay. Well, thanks for your time, Paddy.
I'm going to put you on. I'll put you on hold though, Lee. I'm going to get Dave to give you let's see if I can figure this out. Okay, I'm going to put you on hold. Way to go.
All right, sure. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye. All right, Lee is on hold. And all right, that's me.com. Okay, let's take a break for the news. When we come back, plenty of time for you. Don't go away.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back to the program. Just quickly before we get to the caller, we just had a call into Dave. There's a group of adults out on Southlands Boulevard that have a young 10-year-old boy who seems a little bit disoriented. So the adults are on the scene. They have the child. They're looking for the parents. The RNC have been called. So if your son or your 10-year-old is missing in and around that area, please know that there are adults on the scene. If you make your way to Southlands Boulevard right now, you'll be able to be reunited. We understand the child is okay, and the RNC have been called. But that was just a message we wanted to put out on behalf of the lady who called Dave Williams. Let's go to line number 1. Good morning, Kimberly Oram. You're on the air.
Hi, Patty.
Hi there.
It's been a long time since I've called in, but we have a cool event that I wanted to share with your listeners.
Sure. What's going on?
So we've got a seal celebration tomorrow at Island Rooms of Petty Harbor from noon until 5 p.m. We've got seal tastings starting at noon until about 2. So we're going to try a taco recipe that we've never tried, but we wanted to offer that for folks to, and in addition to pan-fried seal that your nan might cook up. And then at 2 p.m., we have Danita Catherine Burke, who is an academic researcher, and she's going to be talking about some of her research that she's done as a fellow at the Center for War Studies at the University of Southern Denmark. So she's going to be talking about her research that she did while at that position, especially about her latest book titled Cultural Violence, Stigma, and the Legacy of the Anti-Sealing Movement. So that's at 2 p.m. I will need RSVPs for Danita's talk. So if folks would like to come and listen to what she has to say and a Q&A following, I'll need a little RSVP shot to the cell phone for Fishing for Success, and that number is 709-740-3474. And then following Danita's talk, we'll have a chat with elders and youth about getting seal on the school food menu, because most recently we had the national school food announcement, and the Canadian Senate produced a report called Sealing the Future. So we'd like to talk about getting seal on the school food menu and what would that look like, and how youth might get involved in that. And so we hope to have community involvement and lots of conversation about that. We have elders from First Light who'll be out there, and also elders from the settler community, and of course youth from Fishing for Success, Canada Summer Jobs employees. So we hope the community will come out.
I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this question. It might be a bit of a dumb one, but what exactly is the hopeful outcome here? What are you trying to achieve necessarily?
We'd like to normalize eating seal. We've kind of moved away from that. It's we don't see it on menus unless it's just during the month of April, and then it's in shishi restaurants, and it's not in hospitals, it's not in schools, it's not a normal thing that you see. So we would like to normalize it as a local school food that's sustainable and healthy and nutritious. And especially now as we're moving forward to a national school food policy that that will help our local children, it's a great opportunity to start having a discussion about what that looks like for children.
What does the seal taco menu entail? or the recipe?
Well, basically, it's just instead of using cow, we're going to use seal. It's going to be the same ingredients, and the lettuce and the tomato and a soft taco shell, and there you go. And we're just going to have seal in there instead of cow.
Are you going to give it the taco seasening that I would put in with the burger?
Yep, same thing.
All right, so someone just called Dave looking for the number. So it's 709-740-3474 for an RSVP if you'd like to be in attendance and have a seal taco and listen to the presentation.
Right, and so that's we've got events going from noon till 5. Folks can check out the information on our Facebook page, which is at Fishing for Success on Facebook. Just run it all together. And so you can check out and see what's going on from noon to 5. And, of course, there's a museum attendance fee. That's $8 admission, which covers the tastings for the seal and then the admissions to Danita's talk and the events. Danita will also have copies of her books there, with the proceeds going to help out the Sealers Memorial Museum in Elliston.
How did you manage to connect with Danita?
Well, Danita, of course, is supportive of the seal fishery or seal hunt, and she knows that Fishing for Success supports the seal hunt and the seal fishery, and so it was sort of a natural connection over that, I guess you could say.
So
Fishing for Success, yeah.
You were just simply aware of her book and went to her publisher or her directly invited her over and she said yes. It was fundamental as that.
No, through social media.
Oh,
the interesting thing that social media allows is that folks and organizations who share a common, whatever common value, you tend to find each other on social media, and so that's how we connected. So Danita, she's a Newfoundlander, and so she's home right now for the summer, and so she said, I'd love to come and present information that I revealed during my research at your spot in Petty Harbor, and so here we are.
Terrific. Good luck with the event. Thanks for letting us know. Anything else you want to offer this morning, Kimberly?
No, that's it.
Good.
Other than everybody be safe and enjoy the food fishery this summer, and if you have anything that I can help on that, sure would enjoy any questions, and folks can pop any emails to fishing@islandrubes.org, and enjoy the summer.
Good to have you on the show. Stay in touch.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, Kimberly.
Bye, Patty.
Bye-bye. All right, very quickly, just another youth sports now. Football NL has their U16 and U18 teams headed to PEI next week for the 2024 Atlantic Bowl. The games are going to be live streamed on the 2024 Team PEI Provincial Tackle Football Facebook page, Wednesday the 10th and Saturday the 13th. Wishing the team safe travels, good luck, and lots of fun. And I believe this lady who just sent me that on Twitter, her son has been recognized as one of the top young football players in the country. I think went to a national training camp in the very recent past. I believe I have the right family here. And this is a great piece of what we're calling Riffs Trivia. In 1990, the town of Grand Falls organized the Beach Boys concert in Grand Falls. Riffs was the ticket outlet for the show. We sold somewhere around 24,000 tickets. We chose Riffs because they were everywhere. Tickets were $19.90 to coincide with the year. Beach Boys were the draw, and all the other acts were from Newfoundland and Labrador. John Stamos, Blackie. John Stamos was the drummer for the Beach Boys. Big learning experience for both Riffs and the town. Bit of Riffs Trivia. Thanks a lot for sending that along, Mike. Okay, final break of the morning, final break of the week. Still bit of time for you to jump into the queue if you want to talk about whatever's on your mind. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Robert, you're on the air.
Yeah, how you doing there, Paddy?
Grand. How about you?
Just reflecting back and right to the point, the send-off for receiving our son from overseas and doing the whole procession that happened here the other day. I didn't PVR it onto TV, but it was to my amazement, it was like an international class act. It was a hard one to you couldn't forget it.
I agree. I thought it was really well done, and as a matter of fact, friends of mine from around the country were tuned in and remarking about just how respectful and thoughtful and excellent it was, on top of emotional and poignant or solemn, whatever people want to use as the adjective, but it was terrific.
It was terrific, and Paddy, it made me feel prouder as a Newfoundlander, and it gave it was just amazing. And the person got on the other day, her name was Mark, and she said it very well and sincere about what she's seen. And I remember, I think it was the day after she got on, she spoke of it very well, and with a nice tone, talking about how positive this was and how important it was for what we stand for, democracy and freedom. This was international. I mean, I don't know what words to put it. I can't find it, but it was nice. And she was talking about also, Paddy, about headstones, and she's looking for someone who can polish them. I don't know who, but there was a name mentioned, and it was someone in Central Newfoundland. His name is Bob Hiscock.
Yeah,
to fix headstones. Now, in talking about that, I'd just like to add on that there is a cemetery, and it's in Mount Pearl, and it's Holy Sepulchre. One time, they would not allow any headstones that were high. Now, my father died in 1965, and my mother had to put a headstone, had to find the money and pay for it out of her own pocket. And, you know, women back then didn't work then, right? You know, she had to keep the family going with the father died only at the age of 45. She managed, but she got some money about a couple of years later, her own, that she saved up, scrimped and saved, and thought her way through to doing it, and got a headstone that was flat because she wasn't allowed to put the proper one there. Now, 20 years after, if my dad had to, or 30 years after, if my dad had to live to be that long, they lifted the rule, and there's probably maybe 100 in that cemetery that haven't got the right headstone, the proper one. And that's so that war veteran who possibly died from PTSD or anything, don't matter, he's denied the privilege of getting the respectful dignity that they deserve, of having the right headstone. And possibly, I would say, it's 100 or so in that cemetery that don't have it. They only get the flat one with no markings on them at all, and the headstone looks deplorable. And really, they're kind of like in the shadows, forgotten about. But that should be addressed, and they should have them headstones replaced, because that's not respectful enough for these people who were forgotten and left out.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, and nor did I know that was the case. I've been to that cemetery, but I didn't really notice or understand the history of the headstones.
Yeah, my father has an ordinary headstone that says, you know, when he was born, when he died, and his name, and that's it. Not even any recognition on that stone about his, when he, the Second World War. I mean, I got all his documentation, his documentation number, and I should be able to take that, go to an MP or a representative and say, hey, he was denied this. Here's a picture of his headstone. This is what he should have, and this is what he got. Can you fix it? But, you know, I've tried to get that done, and that's all I got was the runaround. Nobody wants to step in and go to bat for these people. But that cemetery, there's 40,000 people in that cemetery up to this point, because I got the data from somewhere. And they said, well, the point is, I'm saying there's at least 100. There's probably 200 or 500. I don't know. Of people that served and haven't got the right headstone because of the rule that you were only allowed to have flat ones and not high ones. So they got screwed out of the dignity of a proper funeral. I'm just stating the facts, right? And what's coming from the top of my mind, you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely fair enough. Holy Sepulchre has got to be just about full, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's pretty much. I don't think It's a fact that you can't get a double head resting plate, a double flat. That's one fact. You might be only singles. Now, that might be right or not right. But, yeah, it's I say if there's 10% left of the land or 5%, is not much.
And I think the same could be said for a lot of cemeteries in and around town, for sure. Robert, I appreciate your time. Anything else you want to add this morning?
Well, I hope the government probably look at that sometime and revisit their policies about headstones that are not properly, people
never get the right dignity to get the proper funeral and say, hey, let's get these headstones up and let's put the right ones in. And these veterans that indeed fought for our freedom, let's give them the dignified funeral that they should have.
I can't even.
And I got to start somewhere. And somebody else across the province should be getting on board and calling in about it, and it might come to something that we can get something done.
I can't even wrap my mind around why that would have been the case in the first place. Strange.
I know it should be automatic that you get one, or at least that they had it. They should. You can say what you like, but it should be fixed, and it can be fixed.
Appreciate your time, Robert. Thanks for doing it.
Thank you very much, Paddy.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. All right, final call this morning goes to line number 2 with a life hack. Let's go. Aubrey, you're on the air.
Paddy.
Yeah.
How are you today?
Grand. How about you?
Good. For cleaning the brass, as ketchup, that's what we used years ago, and cleaning the windows with vinegar.
Okay. So did you say ketchup to clean brass?
Yes, it does a real good job on it.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah. That's what we done years ago.
Well, fair enough. If it works, it works. Who cares what you have to use? Hey, boy.
Well, a lot cheaper, I suppose, than that expensive cleaners.
We got a bit of repeating going on here. So apparently ketchup contains citric acid, which makes it a good cleaner. There you go. You learn something new every day.
Yes.
All right, Aubrey, we got a bit of a repeater going here.
You have that's why I had to turn the radio off. Sorry about that.
No problem, Tal.
You have a great weekend.
You too. Thanks for the call.
And I've listened to your show ever since you've been on, plus the ones ahead of you.
Appreciate you tuning into the program. Stay in touch. Don't be a stranger.
Have a great day. Thank
Very
you.
same. Thanks, Aubrey. Bye-bye. All right, so ketchup works, Marty, because it contains citric acid, but this is another recommendation. Better to use lemon juice and water. Now you know. Final check-in on the Twitter box for VOCM Openline. You know what to do. Follow us there. Offer your suggestions or comments about what you heard or things that you'd like to hear discussed more frequently on the show. Email address openline@vocm.com. And, of course, we will indeed pick up this conversation again on Monday morning right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy weekend. Talk Monday. Bye-bye.
How to have fun anytime, anywhere. Step 1. Go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2. Collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3. Play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games. All for free?
Step 4. Unleash your excitement.
Woohoo!
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.